I believe there's only one figure.
Okay, that might be.
Can you hear me now?
So, red light.
Red light off.
Red light off. Red light is on.
Oh, no. Leave it alone.
Red light is on me.
When the red
No,
light's
okay.
on, it means they're not hearing.
After 22 meetings of here, I still haven't figured it out.
Scott, can you hear us?
They can't hear you.
So red light is muted.
So if you want to swear, turn the light
Does
on.
everybody have everything they need? Do you need your clerk to do anything else?
Okay, we'll call the meeting of the Mendocino Local Agency Formation Commission to order. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner McNerlin. Present. Commissioner Hammerstrom.
Here.
Commissioner Doble.
Present.
Commissioner McCowan.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here?
Commissioner Silver.
Here.
Commissioner Ward.
Here.
Commissioner Rosenberg.
Here.
Apologies for Commissioner Madrigal and Hamburg.
Yeah, I got an email from Dan, said he's in jury duty. Okay, consent calendar. So anything on any changes on the summary minutes?
I think there are some minor corrections to the minutes. First of all, on page 6, matters for discussion, item 12, the fourth paragraph. The way that's stated, it's unclear to me what is being said. It shows that I ask if the final adopted and published MSR contained the incorrect factual reference as noted by the district. And my recollection is a member of the public had stated that some of the factual information in the MSR was incorrect. So if that sounds right, we might change it to say that the MSR contained the incorrect factual reference as noted by a member of the public. And
You're referring to Cal Water, right?
yeah.
So I don't remember that public person talking. Who was that?
Mr. Howard,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
and he referenced a previous agreement.
Right.
So,
Correct.
but as stated here, it makes it look like the district was raising an objection. So, I don't think that was accurate.
Okay. Is there any other?
Or rather, I think it could be clarified that the issue had been raised by a member of the public.
Carol.
Mr. Howard wasn't here last meeting.
No, but we were discussing the issue that he had brought up, I
see.
believe.
Okay, thank you.
And then on page 7, item 15, independent clerk contract. The discussion was that any agreement that we might have with the clerk would more likely create an employer-employee relationship rather than an independent contractor relationship. And I think the executive committee was asked to research that issue. And so the final sentence here, the executive committee was directed to proceed in conjunction with legal counsel, is a little unclear and makes it sound like we're going ahead and having a separate contract. And the direction, I think, was to clarify, could that be done without creating the employer-employee relationship?
Okay. So you just want to add that?
Well, I'm just stating that this is unclear. I don't have exact wording to fix it.
And the executive committee did discuss it, and and I did speak with the legal counsel too.
So maybe for those two items, the tape could be reviewed or something, and the minutes could come back, or,
Okay. Clerk says okay.
16, George Williamson, and then item 16. And then at the bottom of the page, Carrie Brown honored the full title of the organization as the Mendocino Women's Political Coalition.
Okay,
And
good point.
That's what I had.
All right. I'd like to pull the monthly financial report, so for more discussion, but is there any more changes to the minutes? Seeing
Mr.
none?
Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to approve the minutes with the noted changes. And, well, I guess we can do the financials separate.
Yes, please. Is there a
Okay, so-
second to the motion? Teresa,
Second.
Teresa, second.
Yes.
We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner McNerlin?
Aye.
Commissioner Hammerstrom?
Aye.
Commissioner Doble?
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes?
Commissioner Silver?
Yes.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes, thank you. Good catch, John. So on the monthly financial report, I had a few things that I wanted to go over. We did discuss the applications at the executive committee level, and I wanted to bring up a couple of points for the commission's information only. You list the City of Ukiah Valley Sanitation District, MSR. It's really not an application, George. It's more of a trust fund. And we received a letter from Charlie Stump stating the breakdown between how much the City of Ukiah is due, that refund, and the Ukiah Valley Sanitation District. And you were going to bring a letter for me to sign to tell them that they needed to contact the auditor's office for that money. It's not something that we would issue a check to. Isn't that, Doug, do you recall that conversation? I know Holly was there too. We talked about that they needed to contact them, not us, because we're not holding the money in our funds.
Right. Yeah, I think I do remember that, yeah.
You haven't prepared that letter yet, George?
No, that was an executive committee direction, and I was going to
Okay.
get that to you. But now, just so I'm clear, in the cost track, line item 2 under applications, it does say City of Ukiah UVSD MSR Trust Fund.
Yeah, but it's not part of our funds. It's a separate item that they put the money with the auditor's
Correct.
office,
So
not our
how
funds.
should that be stated differently?
I think it should be removed from our application. It's not part of our applications.
Aren't those funds under our control?
No. No, it's
Well, the
actually-
funds aren't, but the application is. I think Commissioner, yeah, the application is under our control, but the funds were deposited, you are correct, you're both right, I think. That's great. That's my understanding, is that the application is on file, it's getting closed out, and the funds, and the executive committee direction was a letter is going to be prepared for chair's signature, directing to the UVSD and the City of Ukiah. It's going to reference a letter written by the then city manager, Jane, help me.
Chambers.
Chambers, thank you. Establishing the distribution amounts, and then that goes to those entities, and then they go directly to the auditor.
Right.
That's my direction.
John?
Well, then going back, it could be a year. Weren't we looking to the district, and I think you're saying the same thing, we're looking to the district and the city to agree on what the distribution ought to be.
You are right.
But there was a letter from Charlie Stump giving the percentage breakdown and how much money would go to the city and how much would go to the Ukiah Valley
But we would
Sanitation
want to
District.
have concurrence by
That's
the
right.
district.
That's why I wanted a letter directly to both parties to
Right.
say, this is where it is. Do you agree or not agree?
Right.
And
And
Teresa,
that's-
there is a letter in our packet that says that from Charlie, so you might want to, provide that to your board.
I'm sure it's by the ESSU
Yeah.
percentage that we put in our budgets.
Doug?
Well, all these applications, we need the letter to get it paid, but all of these applications are money that isn't part of our accounts. And
It
so
is.
we still track that application. and what costs are against it and what we're owed, and when that payment comes in, we put it in as a receipt. So that seems to be similar to how we track all applications.
Did you have a comment?
Well, so then, if I'm understanding this correctly, the process is people file an application with us, they deposit funds
No.
with the auditor, and, yeah, 'cause
Doug's not correct. The money when we get from the application goes into our bank account. This was a specific one that went directly to the auditor.
Yeah, no. What I mean is the ultimate payment of amounts on all of our application fees are from someone else.
Yes, we're
So the
holding it.
tracking of it
Right.
would be the same. It's just a more convoluted way of
Yeah.
getting the payment ultimately into our
well,
account.
the payments are from someone else, but other than this one exception, the funds are deposited into our account, we draw against them.
Right, right. And I do this for the benefit of the auditor, so that at the end of a fiscal year, we know how much money we hold in funds from applications, not from our particular budget.
Okay.
And I think George said it correctly, that one has been closed, right? So therefore, it wouldn't be on our tracking anyway.
Okay.
It only appears on your application tracking because there is one remaining unresolved matter to deal
Okay.
with, and that is the fund distribution. And my understanding of the direction I got was that as long as there was any, like, for example, the Fort Bragg matters, those are, the commission has acted on those, but there's some unremaining funds, and then there's some, so I was proceeding on the direction that as long as there was something left to do, you guys wanted to know about it.
But it should be a note, though, underneath the application.
We can do that.
That, because
Sure.
then we know it's not in our funds. The Fort Bragg, that one is in our funds. They did pay
True.
us. And it's part of our monies that we need to know that we may have to pay those back out.
Well, you will have to pay for Fort Bragg to the BOE, so
Right.
I can make some good point. I will annotate this table in subsequent
And the other
packets.
reason, George, is important is because later we're going to be talking about our budget and unused funds.
Right.
Well, we can't state that we have those unused funds if it's earmarked somewhere else. So anyway,
Jerry,
yeah,
Did you say that letter was, with
In
the
your
breakdown
packet.
was in our packet?
yeah, it was in mine,
I don't have it.
really.
Correct.
I don't see it on the
I didn't
website
have
either.
Oh, I'm
But
sorry.
we agree on the point of the letter, though.
Okay. It was in the executive committee packet, I'm sorry. I'll try to get a copy to you.
Okay.
Referring to Fort Bragg detachment, you stated in your work progress in March that you had more dealings with Fort Bragg and that you were going to bill them as some additional funds. I think it was up to $8,100.
Yeah, do you want to hear that report now?
Is that going to be on our agenda?
I think it's
I
later.
was going to report on that. Let's see. Why don't I just tell you now? 'Cause I was going to speak to that on executive, I didn't have it specifically listed, but, yeah. Okay, so,
On 15?
two matters. Yeah, I was going to just have a.
Can I just tell you what I was concerned with?
Sure.
First of all, in your reporting of what you do, you worked on this, and I know it's $300 or $400 more that you were going to bill them, but you received no application monies for the month of March. And I think we've talked about this in the past. I'd rather see you bill these people before you actually do some of the work instead of just always do it in arrears. That was discussed at the executive committee level too, because we have 3 applicants here that owe us money and we haven't received any. For instance, we've talked about the Irish Beach Moor annexation. That thing is like 8 months old and we haven't received the $600. We just didn't want to get behind on it. And if you're doing work for these other people, we just need to get those application deposits up front, if you could. That was my only point on that. And if you want to discuss the 8100 at a later date, I just wanted to remind you about billing those in advance.
Well, I'm happy to speak to it now, just
Okay.
we're on topic. It was determined, now this goes back several years prior to our services, but the detachment of lands from the Fort Bragg Rural Fire District that were already covered by the city, that matter was heard by this commission, was approved, and the description and a check from the district submitted and then were forwarded to the Board of Equalization. That is the final step. I mean, the certificate of completion is the final step for us, but the filing with the board so they can get their TRAs, tax rate area notes set up. The State Board of Equalization wrote a letter back to LAFCO in 2013 saying the application, the description was, did not meet their guidelines and there wasn't enough money. Nothing happened. That letter somehow just got into the files with no follow-up. So then when we came on, I was asked, or just recently I was asked to contact the BOE. I did that. I determined what the solution was. I have contacted the fire district, and I have contacted the surveyor who wrote the description, and both have agreed to take steps to rectify that situation and to satisfy the BOE. So this matter is over. What I'm doing is I'm just doing some research. The application's closed. We're just trying to get the BOE filing squared away. The Fire District Board Chief Orsi has been very responsive. He is getting us a check. In fact, have you gotten a check from Fire Fort Bragg? Okay, check's in the mail, and the surveyor has committed to me that he will fix the description to satisfy BOE. Once we get those two things, we just put it in an envelope, mail it to BOE, we're done.
And this is what, 5 years ago that we started this, right?
Yes, it was. 2011. 4 years, 2011.
4 years, okay.
No, 5 years, you're right. My math's off a little bit.
Yeah, just something.
2011.
Some loose ends I just want to get.
Loose ends that are
taken
getting,
care of.
the good news is we're getting them tied up, cleaned up. Do you clean
Put
up
away.
loose ends? Tie up loose ends.
All right, the last thing is, I believe Doug, being the treasurer, and myself get copies of the tracking for the petty cash.
You do.
I think on your report, you need to just put what the balance is of petty cash so the other commissioners know. And it also benefits, again, the auditor to know, because that will be an asset that I will need to book at the end of our fiscal year. So if I know that number, because the commission doesn't get those kinds of information, so I think it's important to have it in there as well.
Okay, good.
Which report did you want that in?
Just the monthly.
The monthly financial?
Just, it says petty cash.
So just
Just
add
put the balance in there. Right now, it's at $200.
It actually says none.
I know, but it should be 200, because that's what the
It means
balance
there was no
is.
action, no
Oh,
in or out of petty cash.
oh.
Okay, sorry about that. I just want to get some things cleaned up, and be aware that we have 3 applications that owe us money, and I believe our executive director is working on getting that paid up, so. Okay, I will entertain a motion. Oh, you have a question?
No? Make a motion?
Make a motion?
Okay. Move
Second.
approval of the March 2016 claims and acceptance of the monthly financial report as discussed.
John, second it.
Well, just minor clarification, was it only the financials that you had pulled?
Yes, just
Oh.
a monthly report.
But I only moved last time for approval of the minutes. We did not approve the claims.
Okay.
Oh, we didn't. You're right. Okay. Got a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Silver?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Doble?
Yes.
Commissioner Hammerstrom?
Yes.
Commissioner McNerlin?
Aye.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes. Thank you for indulging me on that. Okay, number 4, public expression. The commission welcomes participation in the LAFCO meeting. Any person may address the commission on any subject within the jurisdiction of LAFCO which is not on the agenda. There is a 3-minute limit and no action will be taken at this meeting. Individuals wishing to address the commission under public expression are welcome to do so throughout the meeting. Tony.
Tony Orthberg Trails, Commissioner Ward and other commissioners. Basically, as you know, the district election has to go into a second cycle. I think that can be avoided. It'll be going around again in January, December of this year and next year, because you know this is filling just a temporary few months. I would recommend highly that in the mailings, once it gets beyond the nomination phase, is that a pre-addressed envelope with the ballot be sent to every district, which will notify them that indeed there's a voting document within the packets they received. There was quite a bit of confusion in what was a ballot, and many district staffs didn't realize it was time to vote. So even though the paperwork said there's an election. So I would just recommend, like the public radio station does, is that I don't call for postage, but at least an envelope with a ballot that has no other action on it but the voting process be included in future district elections. And I do thank this commission for holding those elections, as both the city and the county have their own processes, and this is the only election process the commission does hold. So I would just recommend that as a future enhancement to the process. And we might get a quorum in the first round. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Is there anybody else?
Hi, my name is Dusty Dillon. I'm Noyo Harbor Commission. One of the things that we've found working in the harbor and working in the commission is that our legislators are not versed in the uniqueness of our situation, and I'd like to just take a few minutes and give you some harbor history. This is Noyo Harbor as it exists today.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about this at the Spear.
I'm only giving you a historical
Okay.
review. This is.
Do you want to wait till that and do it together?
I can.
Because then you'd have a little bit more time than
Yeah,
you do
now you only
under
get 3
public
minutes.
expression.
Right. I have 3 minutes, and
Yeah.
I prepared for 3 minutes, and you know.
Well, I'll give you 5 if you wait for the other.
It just, to me, it makes sense we would hear this when we consider the district.
Yeah. If you don't mind, we'll just wait, unless you want to leave early. Or are you going to stay for our workshop?
No, I'm here for this.
Teresa?
Can I make the recommendation to move the Noyo Harbor up on the agenda?
Why don't we just plow right through?
Yeah, let's just
We
move
could
on.
take it ahead of
If you don't mind,
our speech,
I'll
maybe.
just bring it
Item
up, and you
number
have plenty
11.
of time. And I think what you're going to give us is really important, too, for the background.
I do too.
But I'd like to hear it all at the same time. We'll
Thank
probably
you.
have questions for you, too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to, any questions? We'll go on to public hearings. Has there been, the public notifications been sent out on these? Clerk?
Commissioners, this is a continued hearing. It was noticed, it was brought back to you, it was duly noticed and scheduled for hearing at the most recent meeting where you considered this. You heard both from district staff and from tribal representatives, and there was a request made to allow more time. This was continued to date certain, April 7th today. Allow those two entities time to negotiate, come to agreement, with the understanding that it was going to be brought back on this date no matter what. And that, yes, in answer to your question, this was noticed public hearing.
Okay, any other additional correspondence received?
We have received some email correspondence from the district representative. I believe Mr. Martyr is here today. I don't believe anymore. I know that Mr. Martyr is here today
Okay, good.
to talk to you about that. He has communicated with us email about a meeting that his district representatives and tribal representatives had held, just that they were going to hold that. They were optimistic, and that he would be here today to report to you on that. And that's the only correspondence that I've received on this matter since you last heard it.
That's, okay, so that includes Round Valley, Millview, and Mendocino County Resource, as well as the
Oh, no,
Countywide.
I'm sorry. I thought are we just on
Well, do
Round
you want
Valley?
to do, the pleasure of the commission, do you want to do a public hearing and just keep it open for 5, 6, 7, and 8, or do you want to do it individually?
I think it's probably better practice to do them separately.
Separately, okay.
And this one potentially could be expedited if we start with the district manager and hear his.
Yes, that's good. All
So,
right, we'll open the public hearing at 9:27.
You're continuing the public
Oh,
hearing.
continuing, you're right.
It's okay.
These are too confusing. We got to get these done. We'll continue the public hearing. George, let's go ahead and give us an overview on it before we bring up the general manager.
Yeah, yes, good. I would like to say that the district staff, Mr. Martyr in particular, but also his board, have been very communicative to staff during this update, explaining some of the history, providing perspectives, and when we continue this matter, we said one of two things would happen. One is if the district and the tribal governments were able to come to an agreement and produce that agreement in some written form, that this commission would consider the expanded sphere to get up into the watersheds. Absent that the SOI would be the same as coterminous to the district boundary. So we didn't see a written agreement. We saw communication, and that was very promising. And but in order to complete this as part of your cycle, staff is showing you that the second option and the resolution supports the second option, with the clear understanding that acknowledgement that these conversations, these negotiations, these discussions are going to continue, and that as soon as some agreement is reached, this water district is encouraged to come back and present an expanded SOI. That's my staff report.
Okay, very good. Is there anybody from the public that would like to address this item? You want to speak on it? Come on up.
Yes. Thanks for having me, commissioners.
Thanks for
Ward,
traveling all the way
and,
from Covelo.
I'm living in Ukiah now.
Okay.
Thank you, and it's been a long process. There's just two important points I want to make about the district requesting this SOI. And the first is that we need an identifiable watershed for the Covelo Round Valley. Statewide, countywide, there's no recognized watershed. And yet, as you know, we have 5 creeks flowing out of our hills into the valley, which we share with the tribe. The water is very contentious. So the second very important thing is just working with the tribe and being able to do that and have them listen. And so now we're together, we're communicating. We just had a meeting with 2 tribal council members at our board meeting. It's very positive. The discussion is that they would be able to work within our SOI under our mission to protect our watershed and our aquifer, and to be able to do studies with a much bigger budget, because that's what we need in order to get the data required to understand our aquifer and our watershed better. I was hoping Paula Britton would be here. She's the council administrator now. She has a lot of experience in Lake County doing this work. And so the discussion and the concept is an MOI between us, and this is going to take some time. There's, as you know, water is a very contentious issue, and so I worked on groundwater management plan with the tribe for 3 years, and I understand how important it is to the tribe, how complicated it is. So we're moving forward, and we will be back. And I think we're really going to come up with something written. Of course, working with the council, it takes time, particularly this issue. So again, I appreciate the time you've taken up to this point, and it's been groundbreaking, and it's going to move forward. You'll see us in the future, I'm sure.
Question, so if I understand correctly, given that discussions are ongoing, but there's not yet been a resolution between the district and the tribe, that you're not opposed to the recommended action of declaring a coterminous SOI at this point?
Yes, thank you for clarifying that. No, we're not opposed to that.
Thank you.
I do have a
Go
question.
ahead, Karen.
Sir, you have a, under CASGEM, low priority basin.
That's correct.
But you have engaged in or actually monitoring what surface water and has to do with your groundwater. I mean, the two together.
We would like to be monitoring it. It's very difficult to do that. It's very expensive to do that. And that's one of the goals that we have. What we do monitor is the groundwater levels 4 times a year on about a dozen wells.
And do you report that? I think
Yes,
someone
to
else,
CASGEM.
okay, you
Yes.
do to the state.
Yes, we do the wells that the DWR has done for a number of decades. I took that over.
Yeah, I think it's really important to note that, given the fact that Ukiah Valley has a medium
That's
priority
right.
basin, but we do have low priorities that are being monitored every year.
Right, and if that changes, we don't want to be at a crisis point where we have no relationship with the tribe. We want a unified voice on at least that we're studying it, that we're working together. And Jim Russ, now the council president, very much on board of this. Carlino Bottega, a number of the board members, what they've said is keep the discussion open. Let's move forward. They cannot receive grants now from DWR unless they start to integrate with the local communities. And the first step of that is huge, communicating. It's new to all of us. So it's going to be an interesting little microcosm. It'll be national groundbreaking news if we make it through.
I have a question for you. Back in January, Miss Britton was here. I think they were going to get a legal opinion on how the tribe would interact with districts
Yes.
such as yourself. Did you ever see a legal opinion on that?
Well, they're working on a memorandum now through their legal counsels.
Okay.
And when we have something in writing, then we'll be able to take a look at that, our board look at it, and then we'll be able to present it to LAFCO lawyers as well as...
I think it'd be really important because this would be setting a precedent throughout the county, because
Yes.
there's tribal lands throughout
Yes.
the county that are in districts that will know how to apply it in the future.
Yeah, it's very important.
Scott Brown, I noticed, had an opinion on tribal lands. Did he send you anything on that? Because
He
it's on his
was-
billing.
He was researching that, and we got no, we did not get that yet.
Haven't got that yet, even though we billed this already, huh? Okay.
But could we note that we need to, whatever he is coming up with, be really
Right.
nice to have it
And then your memorandum of understanding would be very important for us to get a copy of that as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we'll stay in touch with George. We've been working with Sarah West as well, very closely, and yeah.
So what you're thinking, to come back in 5 years when this SOI is back before us, or do you want to do an application?
Yeah, I would like to see it a lot sooner than that. You know, we're going to keep it on the table and keep it hot, and
Okay.
so we'll wish us luck.
Well, keep us informed. Any other
We will.
questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak on this item? Okay, John.
So I'm ready to make a motion, and just for style, I would suggest when we adopt these as final, we would delete the update dates and all of that information other than the adoption date, because that's really the only relevant date. So that's just, hopefully we could follow that practice for all of these in the future. So I move adoption of Resolution 151616, Attachment 2, thereby reaffirming the existing sphere of influence for the Round Valley County Water District to remain coterminous with the district's boundary.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Carrie seconds. Okay, Doug.
So does the motion include that change in the, whether we continue to list these dates? It does seem helpful if someone
Well, it's all part of
wants
the
some of the
record.
history of the document
Well, if people want
to know where to find it.
If people want to know that, it's all part of the record, but the document is what's relevant, not the date we discussed it.
How many times does it come up?
Well, might be the first place that people would look to be able to find out where the other
Well,
information is. So.
my motion would include that the only date on there is the date of adoption, because that identifies the document. Everything else was a draft.
Okay, any other questions to the motion? Let's do a roll call, please.
Commissioner McNerlin?
Aye.
Commissioner Hammerstrom?
So I don't know if we're going to separately discuss this question about what dates we put on there.
The only date that would appear on here per the motion is the date of adoption.
Well, and for that reason, I'd vote no.
Would you like that reason noted in the record?
Yes.
Commissioner Doble?
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Silver?
No.
Commissioner Ward?
Yes. Are the ones that posted on the website, do they have all the dates on them now?
Yes, because the agenda would be posted.
They
like
should
that.
have the date of adoption, because that's how you identify the document, I believe.
The standard practice administratively is once the document is adopted, it only shows the adoption date. As noted, these documents that are in draft, they're within the
Okay.
agenda packet, and they will continue to be
So
standing
we're
as the record.
consistent with our dates on our website?
It would be consistent just to have the adoption date.
Okay, motion approved, 5-2. So we continue on with the public hearing. This one has been noticed. This is not a continuation, correct? On Millview County Water District?
It's not a continuation.
This is not a continuation.
Okay.
However, as noted in your staff report, you have a request to open the public hearing, consider the matter, but then continue the matter to May 2nd per the district. Mr. Kohler General Manager Kohler has communicated to us that while he has worked very closely with staff in preparing this SOI update and is in agreement with the proposed boundary, he would like to take this to his board one last time for review at their April meeting, which will happen in the next couple of weeks, and just so he can advise them on what this recommendation is. So for that matter, the district is requesting continuance to May 2nd to allow time for board review.
Okay, well, the public hearing is still open. We'll continue this item.
So moved.
Second.
Did we open
Well,
it? Did we
yeah,
open
I
the
think
hearing?
what George said is open the public hearing.
Yeah, we had a motion.
We
And
still
then you
open.
would ask for public comment, and we would continue.
Bless you, bless you. I didn't close the first public hearing, though.
Well, I think,
That was a
are you saying this one
continuous.
has been opened or not?
Well, that is completely at the cleanest way to do it is to
Close the
open
first
each
one?
one.
Okay.
And so I believe you did close on Round Valley, so the action would be open each one.
And Round Valley, it had been previously opened, so then we closed it.
Yes, you did.
This one, it has never been opened, so we would open it and then continue it.
Okay, I will state then that the Millview County Water District Sphere of Influence update, open the public hearing at 9:43. Anybody from the audience, public would like to address this? Now I'll take a motion for continuance.
Motion stands?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue this item till May meeting. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, so moved. George, just for record though, I think John brought up at the last meeting about the wheeling agreement with Maverick Enterprises. Did you ever research that? You did bring that up, right?
Well, the direction from the minutes was to simply state the agreement accurately in the update.
Content of the.
So we
Okay.
can verify whether that's occurred or not.
Next time out.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that
Yeah.
we didn't lose that one. Okay, we'll close the public hearing on Millview County Water District at 9:44.
Continue.
Or we will
Excuse me. And number 7, we'll open up a new public hearing.
I think this is a continuation.
No, actually, no.
This is the first time.
This is the first
This
time.
is, you had this at workshop.
Okay.
You heard from the district manager. There was
Who's
a
on first?
very helpful discussion. And so this is a noticed public hearing. It's the first time that you have considered it as a public hearing.
Thank you.
So you can take action.
You guys are testing me.
Well, the
And you're passing.
And the catch there is, on the agenda, like for Round Valley, it notes it's a continued,
Yeah, that helps.
where the other
Yeah.
ones
Okay.
are not noted as such. So on each one of those, we will be opening a public
Well,
hearing.
the way I'd like to do it is give you your spiel first and then open up the public hearing. So let's go ahead and give us the background information on the Mendocino County resource so the audience can hear it too.
Certainly. At the March meeting, you held your workshop. There were some very good questions. There were some good clarifications in the record. Good discussion with the general manager in terms of hearing what their activities and actions are. We've tried to capture those comments in a strikeout underline format that you have in your packet. And if you feel that we've captured that appropriately, then including the provision that was discussed at the end, that the general manager did say that there could be financial challenges for them doing covering annexation costs for the SOI, but it was pointed out that those annexations could be done by landowner sponsorship or even municipality sponsorship, and that those interested parties could also petition for annexation and help share the annexation costs. So that's in the record now, and with that, staff can recommend approval of this. You have a resolution in your packet for that purpose.
Very good. Okay, we'll open up the public hearing at 9:46. Is there anybody from the audience that'd like to speak before this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. Any
I
questions?
move approval of the recommended action.
Anybody have any questions for us? Nope. We have a
Second.
Carol?
I have a question. One of the things that we asked about last time
was what kind of contacts there were with the tribal entities within the county? It's on. So what were the contacts with the tribal entities? And they said that they had good communication. I just wonder if we need anything more than good communication as a statement?
George?
It's a pretty broad, it is a pretty broad issue. It would require some reference of the actual communications. It seems like it's bearing out in practice, so we didn't add anything to on that topic.
John?
Well, you know, the issue of the implications of including tribal lands within the boundaries, and of course we just took a somewhat different action with Round Valley, where because there wasn't explicit agreement, we didn't expand the SOI. But in that case, the tribe and the district appear to be negotiating on what services the district might provide on tribal lands. So that's where the opinion of the tribes becomes relevant, I think. It's similar to we recognize tribal sovereignty, and yet the boundaries of every tribe are included within the boundaries of the United States, or included within the boundaries of the state of California, or included within the boundaries of the county of Mendocino. So they are within the boundaries, but there's really no relevancy until we're trying to take some action that would impact them. And that's where you have to start discussing, do you have the legal authority to do this? All this is doing is putting an overlay over the entire county that allows any entity in the county to seek services from the Mendocino County RCD. If they don't want services, I don't see that there's any impact or any implications of including them within the boundary.
Carrie?
And I think the saying is government to government. And you're absolutely correct, Commissioner McCowan. Historically, the RCD in Mendocino County has never worked with other agencies or private landowners unless there's a contract between them. And also, it could be grant funding for whatever activity, but I think that the RCD historically has contracts with private landowners, could be city governments, municipalities, and districts, et cetera, just like with the tribes. So I'm comfortable in moving forward on this the way it is stated.
And it's true that the RCD only acts pursuant to agreements that they have. And part of this is to simplify the process, because part of the discussion was that some of the large landowners have lands that are partly covered by the district and partly not, and yet they're within the same watershed. So it becomes problematical not to have the overlay cover the whole county.
Yeah, and another instance is working within watersheds, which RCDs historically, one will take the lead. And the example is the Russian River watershed and the Navarro for fish-friendly farming. But in order to take it out regionally, a separate entity had to be created so it could expand outside the Navarro and the Russian River watershed. And so the RCDs let go of that in order for it to go regionally.
Roll call, please.
We have another question.
I would also add that it's unlike a water district. There's no 218 or fee for service. Basically, it's if you want to reach out to the RCD for assistance, they'll help you find the money to do the work rather than getting assessed or paying a bill.
Anybody else? Will it be quick? Public hearing's closed.
I would just note that this, one of their contracts is with Caltrans for the public lands on the mitigation lands, which is under quite a bit of controversy with the local tribes, and that these contacts with the tribal nations throughout Mendocino County just a listing of contact somewhere in your documents of this agency, because they are beginning to have to associate and work with government-to-government relations, and it is thereby not. I do understand the request for a slightly expanded notation, because it might, again, help that communication occur.
Thank you, Tony. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, George, we'll move on to number 8, Countywide Fire Protection Services, MSR.
Yes, thank you. This, at your last meeting, you completed part 3 of 3. So that was the full set of fire districts in the county as prepared by Baracco and Associates, and the direction of this commission at the March meeting was to notice this and bring back the complete pack, the complete grouping of MSRs given since that time. Baracco and Associates have sent to you by email, numerous emails, the updated, corrected MSRs. They are posted on the website, and there is a, is there a resolution? I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, so on packet page 59, it lists all of the items, and there is a resolution prepared for the commission consideration approving the Countywide Fire Protection Services MSR.
All right, very good. So we'll open up the public hearing at 9:54. Anybody from the public would like to comment on this item for the Mendocino County Countywide Municipal Service for Fire Districts?
Tony Orth, Brook Trails Community Services District. This issue or these MSRs grouped together I'm going to request that you not do the 5-year review, but you come back in 1 year. And I'm requesting that because of many activities. First of all, the formation of an association of Mendocino fire districts. A lot of research is being conducted. A lot of government-to-government relationships are being developed, none of which are clearly identified through the MSR process at this time. There's many details that are going to be different a year from now, I believe, and I don't believe the MSRs reflect that reality. I would direct LAFCO to look at some of the adjoining counties like Lake County, Sonoma County, Humboldt County, as to how LAFCOs are working with their fire districts. So I will request officially at this public hearing, due to the work of the association, to provide this commission with greater detail and common some of the terminology used throughout the MSRs. I don't think we're equally understood by various districts. And there's also, as you heard from the Noyo district, there is a level of information that needs to be provided on such matters as the 5-mile ISO standards, the types of engines provided and how they relate to the ISO standards, and the ability to provide in some of the disadvantaged communities continued service. There's quite a few economic problems existing throughout Mendocino County, including housing, the economics of providing new equipment, and training for the volunteers, and these are becoming critical issues, and I don't believe that's adequately reflected through this process at this time. So I'm requesting that you bring this back in 1 year so that we can expand upon many of those issues.
Any questions for Tony?
I don't have questions, but I
Okay.
do have some
No
comments when it's appropriate.
Anything else, Tony?
No?
Okay, thanks. Anybody else would like to comment on the public hearing process here? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing at 9:56. Bring it back to the commission. Any questions? Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do respectively disagree with Mr. Orth. I do think the 5 years is appropriate. It'll take much longer than 1 year to get all of this cleared up, I believe. And I also believe that not all of these fire districts, with the Countywide Fire Chiefs Association or whatever it's being called, I just think it's going to be longer than 1 year, and I think it's important, the amount of money that we do spend on these reviews, that we want to make sure that process has been completed by the time we start on it.
John?
Well, I agree with Commissioner Brown, and first of all, the MSR, as we've discussed many times, it's a snapshot in time, although we have kind of extended the snapshot in a number of instances, but at some point you have to say, this is the state of these districts as of this date, and then you have a 5-year review, and that's when you would review any pertinent information. If something changes so dramatically that a district is making an application for any of the range of things we consider, of course you take it up then. But there's no reason to schedule anything sooner than a 5-year review for these MSRs, I believe. I do think we ought to clarify, because we are calling this the Countywide Fire Protection Services Municipal Service Review, we should be very clear that it doesn't include all the fire districts in the county, like the Fort Bragg Rural Fire Protection District, the Little Lake Valley, Ukiah Valley Fire District, City of Ukiah, Brook Trails were all previously reviewed as part of other MSRs, either individually or in conjunction with a bigger package. So I would suggest that maybe 2 sentences be added to this countywide MSR, clarifying that it does not include, and then name them specifically, and then the resolution might explicitly name the ones that are included. And I might ask the chair to inquire of the executive officer if that sounds appropriate based on his experience with other LAFCOs in practice.
Well, there is quite a bit of activity. We're seeing it in other jurisdictions, as Mr. Orth correctly pointed out. However, I think that moving forward on this is appropriate. I like the snapshot in time analogy, but I do think that some of the activities that Mr. Orth, I can verify and acknowledge activities that are happening regionally with fire districts, and I'd be happy to add language in the resolution, just if that's the direction.
No, that's not the request.
Okay.
All I'm saying is I think we should say, one line within the introduction to the Countywide Fire Protection Services MSR that it does not include, and then list those that are not included. Otherwise, the title's misleading. And then, then include within the resolution that all of the districts that are included. So when you look at the resolution, you know what's included within the countywide MSR and what isn't. So that's the request I'm making to the
I misunderstood.
commission.
Yes, that we can do that.
And no other changes, because again, all that's going to be reviewed when we do the next snapshot in time.
Mm-hmm.
Doug?
Okay.
So I agree with the intent of this, and I'm just going to suggest that it's not really countywide. Maybe we ought to not say countywide and say say in the heading, multi-district fire protection services municipal review. And then I believe the only place that Countywide is mentioned is in the be it further resolved paragraph. And there say multi-district and then list the districts. Would that adequately address
I
the
think
concern?
so, and then list the districts
Right.
in the resolution.
Good compromise.
We can do that.
Now,
And so that, if
go
I
ahead,
may.
go ahead.
So in the resolves under item 2, we would also strike countywide and say multi-district.
Right.
And then fire services MSR 2016, and then outside of the parenthetical phrase, which includes, and then list them all.
List them all.
Would that work?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I sign the resolution, I'll make sure all those points are made. Now, I assume it won't preclude this commission in reviewing the fire districts through an MSR at any time we wish in the future. So if something significant comes up a year from now, 2 years from now, we could bring this all back.
Correct, if there was a need.
Was there need? Yes. Okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Second.
Second? And then the motion would be as corrected?
As amended.
Or, yeah, as amended.
I think,
Can we clarify that it's an adoption of the multi-district?
The
It is an adoption of the
motion
multi-district.
is approval of the resolution. Right.
As amended.
Okay.
As amended.
I think Angela beat John on the second by half a second.
That's fine. And then there would be the one change to the title page, however, of the document, presumably would be the intent.
Multi.
All right, thank God, that was a big one. So let's,
So the first was Commissioner McNerlin and the second
second
was?
one's Dan. So all those in favor
Was-
say aye.
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 All those
She's
opposed?
still asking who the second was.
It was Angela.
Thank you.
And you have all the changes to the resolution and the.
I do, thank you.
And the motion just passed.
Thank you.
I know that.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item 9, proposed budget for fiscal year 2016-17. George, we'll give you an introduction on that as well.
Yes, this matter was considered at your last meeting, and actually at February 1, the Commission approved a preliminary budget. There were increases in operating expenses. Subsequent to that, the Policies and Procedures Committee met on February 29th, discussed the reserve policy. Committee directed staff to look at recommended 2% reduction. And so in the staff report, we calculate that 2% reduction as $2,500 for account 4,000. We have a resolution for your consideration this morning, 15-16-19. Approve the proposed budget for 16-17 with any requested revisions. Now, the recommendation of the Policy and Procedures Committee should be considered during this public hearing, and then direction given to staff how you want to handle that recommendation so that we can appropriately account for it in the budget. And then upon your action today, the budget, as you take action on it this morning, will be sent certified mail to all the member organizations for their consideration, and then you will hold a subsequent public hearing for final adoption, I believe, at the May meeting. No, it's April, May, June meetings, thank you. June meeting. And this satisfies your obligation. You are holding this hearing prior to May 1, and you would be holding a final budget hearing prior to June 15th. And so, like I say, the resolution is there, and that's my staff report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we'll open up the public hearing at 12 after 10. Is there anybody from the public would like to address us on the budget? Seeing none come forward, we'll close the public hearing at 12 after 10, bring it back to the commission. Any comments, questions on our budget? I have a couple, George. First of all, the fund balance of 77,428 is actually 73,968. That was a document I gave to you a few months back showing the monies that were in our savings bank account, treasury account, accounts receivable, estimated expenses left in our budget, assuming we meet our expectations. Additional funds for Fort Bragg detachment gave us a net funds of 73.
73,968, that'll be noted in the...
Yes, not 77, although it's still significant. And the second item is the audit services. You have 4,650, that should be 3,025. We discussed that at the executive committee, that we will pay that in our current fiscal year, and that the engagement letter that I will be signing for next year's audit will only be $3,025.
So in the proposed 4650 reduces to, what was your number again, 3?
It would be same as 1516, $3,025.
Okay, that changes.
So that'll reduce our difference of 35.8 down another $1,600.
$1,525.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the last item is, what was the justifications from our PMP committee on the 2% reduction? Was there an explanation on that?
You know, I'd like to hear you hear from them.
Dan's our chairman, and he's not here today. Because we have such a massive reserve, we don't need to keep drawing as much from the districts and cities and counties as we are. Mm-hmm. We're considering a new reserve policy, which would actually lower the reserve threshold. And we didn't want to do anything drastic as far as lowering fees or using up the reserves. So we thought gradually we would decrease the fees and make up for it in the reserves. But it's very hard to justify to everyone paying fees why we have such a massive reserve and we keep charging them what we are. And then Kevin's also on the committee if you'd like to comment as well.
Well, I certainly support the concept, and I'm just wondering where the 2% came from. And I think another way to approach it is, and of course the effect would be the same, simply reduce the apportionment and then provide that reduced apportionment would come out of the fund balance rather than the reserve. And at such time as we review the reserve policy and possibly adjust the reserve, we can deal with that separately, and that potentially could result in a further reduction in the apportionment for next year. Does that make sense? Or?
Kevin?
I think that's kind of what we were going for. One of the things that we were not clear on was how we ended up with such a reserve. Was it because of years back we weren't completing MSRs, for example, by collecting fees? We weren't sure as a committee why we had that situation. Secondly, it was never discussed, it wasn't apparent to us where we should draw the line on our policy. Should it be a full year's worth of operating costs, or should it be 3 months? Or, we have to decide as a commission what is responsible. The 2% was really just a way to get the ball rolling, and followed by the analysis that, in my mind, we could look at the trend of drawing down our reserves to whatever level we feel, and but we have to project that out for several years, so we don't create a situation where we have to then raise apportionment fees again. So that was the idea of looking at the analysis, was to see.
Well, the first point, when LAFCO decided to open our own bank accounts, much to our surprise, we had $100,000 more
Almost, yeah.
than what the county had been reporting to us, which, so I think that's partly where this large balance came from. And then I think you're absolutely right. We've been discussing about how to utilize that balance and either keep the apportionments low or reduce them, but not do it so drastically that we wind up swinging back up and having to increase the apportionment. And I think part of our discussion has been we're still actively trying to get caught up on the work of the commission, which I think the majority view has been that's a reason to kind of hang on to some reserves. I've always believed our reserves are higher than they need to be, and that LAFCO has a captive audience in terms of we decide what the apportionment is, and the districts, the cities, and the counties don't really have any choice in do they pay or not. I think the auditor ultimately takes it out of their account and puts it in ours. When you look at it that way, there's really no reason to have a 1-year cushion or a 6-month cushion. You know, a reserve of like 3 months worth should be more than adequate when we know that if we need money, we just designate how much we need. It shows up in our account. I like that.
Excuse me, but $100,000 sounds to me like a lot of money. However, if we got ourselves into a legal situation, that $100,000 would go very fast.
Well, right now we have 175,000.
Oh,
Teresa?
but this says,
We do have 173,000.
If you take the fund balance on the reserves.
Yeah.
So what you were discussing is exactly what our committee was discussing. But the last report we got from the executive committee was that the executive committee wanted the reserves to be 80% of the fees. And that
Yeah.
was the last direction we got from the executive committee. So what you're saying today, I completely agree with, but it is not what was said to us a month ago out of the executive committee.
Okay, I think.
So I'd kind of like a little
I think some there clarification on it.
Yeah, and just so you know, this is a work in progress. So the 2% is just as Kevin said, to get the ball rolling. We have asked for an analysis of how we can kind of draw down and decrease and hit a nice middle ground with nothing drastic happening, which would take years. You know, we weren't really in favor of going higher on decreasing the fees at this time because we wanted it to be gradual and we wanted to do the financial analysis first, but we did want to get the ball rolling with the 2% decrease in fees.
Go ahead, Doug, and I'll.
So I guess I wouldn't consider what the executive committee said as direction, and certainly wouldn't, from as personal matter, wouldn't want you to take it that way. I think my expectation was that the Policies and Procedures Committee would develop the discussion that the whole commission will eventually have about what the level of reserve should be, you know, unconstrained, that think about all of the things that should be considered and bring those forward to us with the recommendation, but also try to encapsulate all of the considerations that you think we should think about when we do it. So that would be my preference of how you consider whatever information you got from the executive committee. And I think we cited a reference of some agency general rule, but, you know,
I have that.
it seems like one of the considerations is what John brought up, that we don't really have uncertainty about receipt of our money, and so
Exactly.
so you know, those will I assume, be all the considerations that we take up, and I want the committee, the policies and committee to be constrained in
Well, we're
the
certainly
breadth
not
of how
constrained, but I was
you
just
talk
a
about
little
it. So.
confused. And then also, just to address your concerns, one of the things we're looking at too is not just having a reserve, but having a legal reserve, maybe separate from the rest of the reserve for legal costs, and basing that on what our attorney recommended, which I believed was 20 or 40,000.
It was closer to 40.
40,000. So, we're considering everything, and we have not made the policy yet. We have not gotten the financial analysis yet.
Okay, I'm going to give a little background first, Kevin. First of all, we do have a reserve amount of $100,000 that's sitting in Mendel Lake Credit Union, but we have unused funds that have accumulated for the last several years. But this commission needs to know about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and John remembers this, our apportionment fees were $145,000 a year. And then we reduced them down to $135,000 for 2 or 3 years. Then we reduced them even further to $125,000. So we have a history of reducing these fees every several years anyway, based on our cash balances. So taking that in consideration, I don't want to be in a position next year or the year after to have to raise them back up. So if you look at our budget for the last year, we've overspent $38,000 from the 15-16. Then we've overspent another $35,000. And this next will propose, but the numbers that we're having to spend on are going up, and I think we still have 36 SOIs to do next year. And so I'm concerned if we end up continuing this course of spending $99,000 for an executive officer position to do these SOIs and MSRs, we're going to be significantly underwater. The reserves used to be 20% general and I think legal, and then we had 80% general. But then a few years ago, we just said, let's make one reserve. It could be for both reserves for legal or reserves for general, if it's just one bank account that we wanted to do. So we can use those reserve funds any which way we can. Now, the executive committee did discuss this. We used the City of Willett's policy procedures on reserves, and it basically says we were trying to justify why we have 100,000. So we used 80% of our apportionment fees as a justification, just to justify the fact that we need 100,000. But the reserve that I provided to the commission, I thought I did, will strive to maintain a minimum unassigned fund balance of at least 80% of the apportionment fees and general budget for fiscal stability, cash flow, and contingency. This is based on risk assessment methodology for setting reserve levels developed by the Government Finance Officers Association of the United States, accurately addressing contingencies for unseen operating or capital needs, contingencies from legal matters, cash flow requirements, and revenue source stability from revenue shortfalls. So that would be the policy that we would recommend to the Policy and Procedure Committee that be adopted.
Well,
Now,
we
you
looked at
can
other
discuss it.
LAFCOs. We looked at what other LAFCOs were using, not the City of Willett's.
No, this is
We
just
didn't think just looking at the
This is
City
a
of Willett's
guide.
was a good example.
No, I just said it was a guide. This
Okay.
isn't actually what they said. I just use it as a guide.
Okay, and we believe that because our revenue is guaranteed, we have no need for $175,000 to be sitting there when we could give our cities and county and districts a break. 2% is only $2,500. Even if we go over budget $35,000, we could still do that for another 7 years with
No.
what we have on balance.
Teresa, not if we continue
And
with these SOIs.
but the SOIs are not going to be like this forever. We're catching up. As soon as we're caught up, it should level off. That was the reason for the small 2% decrease, so we could find that happy place.
Kevin was before you, John.
Well, yeah, and I think this was the reason why we recommended that staff look into preparing some sort of financial analysis so that we could see where the two curves are going to meet. And we have to project out several years to identify that. I think we owe it to our districts, cities, and county to do that. I also think that we have to look at this in the context of our fee schedule. We have to know, for instance, if an applicant comes in, if it's an applicant-driven request that produces litigation, we recover the cost for that litigation. It's only actions that LAFCO takes independent of an application that we're actually liable for or have the potential for litigation. So we have to balance that. I don't know if we should just keep a huge legal reserve if the likelihood of litigation isn't as great as it might be for a city or a district themselves. So that's kind of, I think, where we are as a committee is we need to sort of analyze all that, and we need some more information from our staff before we can go further with any kind of recommendation back to the commission. John?
Well, I actually think all of the comments that have been made are, not necessarily inconsistent with each other. So everything I've heard is true. Every comment is valid, and they all dovetail very nicely together. And so we can see the last 2 years, the concern, gosh, look how much we're spending above what was provided for out of the primary revenue sources of apportionment and application fees. And so it's about 73,000. We still have a fund balance of that same amount to draw on, plus 100,000 in reserves. One point, the reserve policy as stated says that we will strive to maintain a reserve of at least 80%. So even if we reduce the apportionment, to me, we don't have to reduce the reserve. I like the 100,000. It's a nice round number. And more than adequate. And then we have this fund balance to provide the cushion, so we don't have to worry that we're drawing things down too rapidly and we're going to be in a situation where we're somehow vulnerable. Also, the timeline of litigation, if we did become embroiled in expensive litigation, we would be able to adjust the apportionment fees in the next fiscal year. So, to hang on to an inordinately large reserve based on fear of what might happen is not a good policy. Having a large enough reserve that you're comfortable with whatever risk. So I think that's kind of where we are. We have 100,000, which is a pretty impressive reserve. And then we have this fund balance that by the draft proposed budget, we intend to continue drawing on, and we'll still be able to draw on it, a couple of years beyond the current, or at least 1 year beyond the current
Right.
at the proposed rate. So, just for round numbers, I would suggest that we could reduce the LAFCO apportionment fees. The committee has recommended a 2,500 reduction, which I would suggest actually reducing it to 120,000, which is only, and then we've noted that the audit services are only going to be 3,025. So that produces, I think it was a $1,475 bump. So if we reduce the apportionment fees to 120 and draw the remaining 3,475 from the fund balance, I think that's a good proposed budget.
Teresa?
Also, something that the committee is looking at are the application fees. We have not updated those in over 10 years. And so we have looked at several other LAFCOs. I think we looked at maybe 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a new fee schedule that we would like to bring to the full commission. Our last meeting was canceled due to something unexpected, but we do have that. And so that will, the application filing expenses revenue would increase because those numbers are significantly increased because it had been so long since they had been updated.
Well, if you look, it's also the same amount for the expenses, so it's really a wash. It really hasn't any bearing on our budget.
That's true.
We've never gotten that high anyway. Doug?
Well, I would support the idea of reducing the apportionment fees for this year in our budget to 120,000. I mean, I'm not exactly sure where it's going to fall out once we exhaust this extra money, but it's going to be somewhere around that. And I would say that number's been put out by John. I'm on board with that. You know, it is a target then for us to eventually conform our budget to, and good to have that target. So.
Okay, I don't have a problem with the reduction of 5,000. If you, some of you remember 2 or 3 years ago, I made a big point about why we had so much cash, and that was one of the reasons we reduced it from 135 to 125. I'm just a bit concerned about the maybe not next year, but the year after, if we're going to spend another 38,000 above our budget, like we have the last 2 years. And at that point, will be a big concern, because I'd rather go down than up.
We still have 100,000.
We still have 100,000, but I think we all agree that that needs to stay somewhere around there. We just don't know what's going to happen. Kevin?
Do you, does the commission agree that we need to do some projections and take a look at the scenario you just mentioned to make sure we're not putting ourselves in that position?
Yeah, the problem is that we've got bids coming in for the next 2 years for executive director, and we don't know. I mean, there are 36 more SOIs to get completed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then we'll be at the point where we can go back and do the 5-year deal. But are we going to spend another? The process we've been going through the last 2 years with the executive office, we're not getting the jobs done. And we continue to push it down the road and costing us more money. And I'm concerned about that. But I'd be willing to go down to 120. I've always felt our fees should continue to go down. But I'm just concerned, that's all. Because I've lived through this for the last 10 years.
Is the fund balance in any way a result of not completing work in past years?
Yes.
Yes, Baracco.
Okay. So that was another question that the committee had, was we didn't come into it with that information. And that's information that we're looking for. If you want a recommendation from us, we need to have the facts.
Well, it's something the executive committee should look at too, because we're the ones that actually have to provide a review of the budget. Is there anybody from the public like to make a comment on this? I thought you might. Thanks, John. We can get to that eventually.
I really want to thank the commission for taking this up. It's certainly the role that the commission needs to take with the 3-member agency groups. I think it's everything said here I also agree with. I think you're doing a good job at reviewing this. I think we do need to have a reserve policy in hand. I think John's statement of the fact the way LAFCO operates, originally it was the need for cash for operation because of the amount of time it takes for the auditor to collect from all the groups. Sometimes is at the end of the budget year, depending on who's paying at what time. So cash flow issues was a tantamount concern originally, and however the commission not really understanding how that would operate as you're getting in depth now, we just said let's always keep in reserve 1 year's LAFCO budget. So that was the original direction that amassed that kind of reserve. So that's just for historical comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. You were involved in a lot of that discussion too back in those days.
Oh, yeah.
This has been something we seem to do every couple of years. But your recommendation, Kevin, about having what we need to do in the future, we do need to look at that. And maybe at the end of this fiscal year, we'll see what our unused reserves are. We'll know what our budget is, and we'll know what our executive director contract looks like, and we'll maybe be able to push out maybe a year beyond that,
Right.
what we think we'll need.
Right, and I think the fee schedule update will have an effect on our next fiscal year
Yeah.
budget as well.
Okay. We want to just get a motion on this? John?
Yes, I recommend that, or I move that we adopt resolution number 151619, changing the figure in item 2 to 39,250, which would be the draw on the unrestricted fund balance. And well, let me rephrase that. So I will move that we adopt the draft operating budget, changing line 4,000, the apportionment to $120,000, changing line 6,100 audit services to $3,025, revising the other figures consistent with those changes, and adopting the resolution adopting a proposed budget, incorporating the necessary changes based on the changes to the draft budget.
Excellent motion. Is there a second?
Second. And it does seem like there was a third change that to Exhibit A.
Well, the amount of funds to come from the fund balance will increase.
Well, the fund balance as of December 31st apparently.
Oh, correct.
Needed a
73,
change as well.
968.
Right.
That's our best guesstimate.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do any other discussion? We'll do a roll call here, please.
Commissioner McNerlin.
Aye.
Commissioner Hammerstrom.
Aye.
Commissioner Doble.
Yes.
Commissioner McCowan.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Yes.
Commissioner Silver.
Yes.
Commissioner Ward.
Yes, thank you. So we'll take a 5-minute break, and I promise to come back and start with Noyo.
That was a conversation.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we got the fixes in. We're gonna get some more RAM and some
Okay, follow-up on the reserve policy. The Policy and Procedure Committee will be bringing back a recommendation. We won't discuss it at the executive committee level, so. All right, we'll move on to workshops. Item number 11 will go to Noyo Harbor District Sphere of Influence update. You want to give a brief overview, please?
Certainly, yes, the staff report that you have starting on your packet, page 78. This is an introduction, first time you've seen the Harbor District SOI update. And right now the SOI is the same as the district boundary. That was the recommendation, or the recommendation in the 2014 MSR was expansion to include a much larger area, 225 acres, or 225 square miles, excuse me. And the district has also requested that inclusion, and so there's, at this point, for workshop purposes, when we look at the current situation there, staff is not recommending an expansion as noted in the MSR and respectfully requested by the district. Staff has had several conversations with the Mr. Dooley and at least one other commissioner. Their plans and their intent for the district is very encouraging, but we just found things in conducting the MSR update that couldn't get us as staff to recommending an expanded sphere. We think the future is potentially bright. We think that the potential for service area expansion in the future is definitely there. We just couldn't make that determination at this time. So what we're asking, and we try to, we acknowledge that both in the staff report and in the findings that you have in the draft SOI. So, and I know Mr. Dooley is here to comment on that. So that's our recommendation. Our recommendation is to keep the boundary as it is.
Okay.
Did I mispronounce? I did. This is Commissioner Dusty Dillon. I apologize.
Dillon. Mr. Dillon, thank you for being patient, and hope you learned something today.
Well, I want to thank you for the direction that this commission's going in. I think that your objectives are much needed. I think that more information needs to be shared with you so that you can make better decisions. I'd like to present some history of Noyo Harbor, and as I present this history, I would like you to think of two things with everything that I say: restoration and access. Okay? So this is Noyo Harbor as it is today. It's a marina. We have a marina that has 250 slips. 60% of those slips are recreational. This is our current district. The Army Corps of Engineers on their last visit suggested that we increase our sphere of influence to a minimum of the Noyo watershed and mark our boundaries. This is what they suggested we mark our boundaries with. I've been trying for 6 years to get these boundary markers put in place. This is the original settlement at Noyo. There were 5,000 people living in what was called Noyo when Fort Bragg was established to protect the Indians. Noyo Harbor is a harbor and it contains a fishing village. But we're also a port district. And the main difference between a harbor district and a port district is that a harbor district generally deals with individual and immediate access to the shore from the sea. A port district deals with all of the land access from the sea and navigational aids. There they are. The first act, I think there's 144. The first act of the Mendocino Board of Supervisors, the very first act of the Mendocino Board of Supervisors was to order a coast road from Noyo to the Garcia River. And this road was to service these ports of access. Many of them were called open roadstead. This is the first development and pier in Noyo Harbor. There are portions of this pier in remnant, and this could be restored. This is city property, and the Noyo Center, which offers a lot of opportunity for Mendocino County, could greatly benefit from having a pier in this location. This is another shot of that location.
What's the time frame of this? What year would this be?
This would be 1860.
1860?
Okay, the predominant resource exported was timber. 50% of the timber was exported internationally. Noyo was taken over by the Union Lumber Company for their purposes, and it predominantly shut down many of the other landings and ports. But again, 50% of the lumber shipped out internationally. This is the last load of lumber to be shipped from Noyo Harbor by sea. It was shipped by the Aborigine Lumber Company in 1959. Okay, and up until the 60s, the Noyo Harbor housed about 450 boats without a marina. Okay, after the marina was added in 1968, there were still 450 boats, but 250 had accommodations into the marina. One of the main ways to cross the river was to walk across the boats. This is a much older picture showing the North Harbor when it was a mud flat. Now, Frank Hyman and Thompson of the ice plant seawalled, dredged, and backfilled this area, and we now have what's known as North Harbor. North Harbor has been developed in an immediate need scenario. Consequently, some of the water pipes of the original water system are redwood. Redwood pipes were invented in Noyo Harbor.
Oh, really? Wow.
Deep water dragging was invented in Noyo Harbor by Manuel Figueredo. Noyo Harbor is a dramatically underused and underutilized resource for the county. The last State of the County meeting that I went to, they said, we're going to do the agricultural report, and they said that grapes brought in 125 million and lumber brought in 75 million, and they continued on, never once mentioning that dragging alone in Noyo Harbor brings in $90 million. Okay, we are a significant resource to the county, and we are truly unaudited. Now, in 1950, the Noyo Harbor Commission was formed to make a plan for Noyo Harbor. In 1972, the Coastal Conservancy funded a Noyo Harbor plan. The final draft was given to the Harbor Commission in 1985, and it subsequently ended up in the bottom drawer of a file cabinet until, for 25 years. And when I came on, I found it and dug it out, and I was working with then Supervisor Kendall Smith and Nash Gonzalez, and I got an agreement with the county that if the Harbor District would adopt this plan, that we could do anything that we needed to do to it, because we have to reassess the calculations. So I have not been successful at that to this date, but now that Jim Hurst has come on board, and Jim has got extensive background with the Park and Rec District, we are seeing ways of branding the Mendocino coast under the auspices of the Mendocino or the Noyo Port District. We have 3 people on staff, so consequently when auditors do come in, that's what they look at. Oh, well, you pay your 3 members on staff, but we have failing infrastructure. We are dealing with, in some cases, adversarial government that are bending directives to force economic hardships on people wanting to do maintenance and repair. I'll give you just a brief suggestion on that. I own 200 feet of the waterfront, and I've got a significant fish receiving dock. My spring pilings, and the spring pilings are the ones that have no structure on them. They just go in the front, and they allow the boats to not hit the structure or go into the shallow water. There was legislation passed federally to protect eelgrass areas, and the reason for that legislation is that if you went to an island, say Susha, in the Puget Sound, and you dropped an anchor and you laid out 300 feet of chain, your boat would swing in an arc and consequently wipe out 600 feet of habitat. Well, they've taken the regulations from this and they've extended them to the point to where I want to take treated pilings out and replace them with non-treated pilings in the same holes, yet they want me to pay for a $15,000 survey for eelgrass. Yes, the eelgrass is there. No, we're not going to disturb the eelgrass. I still have to pay for it. It's a $10,000 job. I can't do it. And that story is repeated throughout the harbor. We need to upgrade the facility for maximum access. At this point, we have no pedestrian access. We have no fuel dock. We're losing our ice plant. We have deteriorating structures. We've got the harbor district itself is confronted with a collapsing pier that half of them want to take it out and be rid of it, and the rest of us say, no, we've got to replace it, or they won't let us replace it if we take it out. So these regulations need to be addressed so that we can become economically viable. Some of the merchants got together and put up Welcome to Noyo Harbor working waterfront, and we listed some of the recreational activities here. There was an excessive amount of resistance to this Welcome to Noyo Harbor sign, and we had to put this halfway down the road on on North Harbor Drive because we were not allowed to cross an invisible line to put this sign up by the highway. So,
meaning within the city limits?
Well, within the city limits, but it's also the harbor district's limits. And, you know, one of the things that's happened in the Noyo Harbor is whoever's loudest is right.
Well, I'm just trying to clarify where the resistance was to putting up the sign.
Okay.
Property owners, political jurisdictions?
No, here's political jurisdictions, and a I consider to be misguided. In any case, amongst the things that merchants are doing in the harbor and organizations, the traditional small craft associations, the 1985 Noyo Harbor Plan dog and an adult, and it would increase the activities on the waterfront. One of the biggest things that I hear from the fishermen is, well, I had my first boat when I was 15. I always ask, well, where's the 15-year-olds today? Oh, well, they're just pushing buttons with their thumbs. And I said, well, you know, I think if instituting a Sea Scout base. Now, with what a Sea Scout base will do for us as adults is it will give us the opportunity to put 150 kids
statutory or legislative authority there is that establishes that would be very useful information, I think. In a kind of a general comment, a lot of the background that you're providing is really information that would inform the MSR, which was adopted a couple of years ago. And then all of that, out of that, then potentially you'd see a recommendation to increase the SOI. And, when we get into discussion, I have some comments on that. But I also think, as Commissioner Brown notes, a lot of the issues you're raising could be addressed to the county very appropriately. And, the county has, I think, not, in my opinion, has not served the Noyo Harbor area well. It's kind of been something of a stepchild. Because I think at one point, some years ago, there was a thought this is an area that might logically be annexed by the city. This is just my perception, and so I think there's been some thought, well, we're not going to do a lot with Noyo because the future of Noyo is more with the city than the county. Whether that was true or not, I think that perception has influenced the thinking of some people.
Some people think that the city of Fort Bragg should bring their city limits to include the fort building and the city hall and allow the rest of it to be Noyo.
I don't know about that.
That way you wouldn't have to change the maps. Noyo is the birthplace of Mendocino County. It's not that we're a disregarded stepchild. We're aging parents wishing to be put where they want to put us in a warehouse.
Well,
let us fade away.
we should be more solicitous of the needs of our elders.
Thank you. That was well put.
Anybody else have a question?
Yeah, I just have exactly what it is that you're asking of us. Now, I see that you have this sphere right here. Exactly where do you want to expand it? How do you want that to
Countywide.
look? So you want the entire county?
Well, we would like the entire county, and what the entire county would do for us is it would help fund the services that are needed by the Resource Development Agency, by Fish and Wildlife, and there's a lot of things that that we could move in the direction of providing the services to get beyond the roadblocks that are happening. One of the things that we've got going is we have no fish cleaning station. Now, everybody wants to run up and down the street and say, well, we're a fishing village. We have no public fish cleaning station at all. Why? What's that about? Well, that's suppression. And at this point, remote fish cleaning stations, and there is only one legitimate fish cleaning station in the state at this point, and that's in Crescent City, and it was put in as a part of the rebuild of that harbor. But we have designed a portable unit that works much like a porta potty. But the water board wants us to evaporate the water that we clean the fish with.
Well, what's the tie-in to the SOI though?
Yeah.
What is inhibiting?
I don't get that.
Well, the SOI is that if we can get a solution to the fish cleaning station, we can get fish cleaning station in all of the recreational areas in the county, which is a direct public service to enhance tourism, to enhance educational opportunity for our young people in the county.
But you can put a fish cleaning station in your current SOI right now. Your inhibitant is the water quality board, not your
the
SOI.
Okay, but our SOI would put us in a better standing with the Water Quality Board because we would be not addressing a problem on the 3200 block of something. We would be addressing a problem that we both share throughout the county to benefit the county.
Okay. Doug?
Yeah, you say that you're both a harbor and a port district, but at least the current Harbors and Navigation Code defines those two kinds of districts in separate parts of the... and so I don't know if you know if the current Harbors and Navigation Code has the same language about formation of port and harbor districts as the code did in 1950 when your district was formed, or whether it was some completely different statutory language. And I don't know whether staff knows the answer to that question, but it seems like we all need clarity about that, and it ought to be clear in our document which kind of a, what is the law they were formed under? Is it the law of formation of port district and harbor district as the code now states, or was it some prior version of the code?
Okay, you remember when the Spanish...
Because it does make a difference in terms of powers and how things would happen and that kind of stuff.
When the Spanish were in control and there was a transition of power...
Well, I'm talking about when the California legislature was in control, because they were in control in 1950, and that's what kind of district you are legally. And so I'm just trying to know if you know whether the current code reflects the code as it was when you were formed.
I've tracked down the anomaly that has created some of the confusion. When the Spanish were in control and they transferred control to the Americans, they transferred the control to the Navy, and California ports were set up under Admiralty law. And evidently Admiralty law has gone recessed into the administrative process. Have you noticed that sometimes things will happen at the end of an era? And I think that we were formed pretty much at the end of the coastal access era for international shipping. And I think that the port district was a carryover from an earlier time. And I have not found anything to rebuke or cancel that. But again, I have to agree with you. I can't seem to find anything that currently supports it. So I have to ask the question, has eracism occurred? Have bureaucrats simply dropped a line here or there, and so now we've eliminated the access to the clear understanding of what the law is? I would really like to know one way or the other, but as a port commissioner, I am pursuing a water access agenda, and I am pursuing it in the broadest
the federal admiralty law. So, but I
Let's
think we need to
wrap
pursue this
up.
discussion.
Let's wrap it
Well,
up.
in any case, I see that there's a lot of opportunity for expanding the sphere of influence of Noyo Harbor.
So this,
If you won't consider the county, please consider the coastline, because it would give us enough population to support our activities in providing better service and access to the public.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Well,
You had a question?
yeah. So, and I think you've given the answer a couple of times, but the primary reason for increasing the SOI would be to increase the revenue that the district would be entitled to.
Yes.
And then I think you did say that the Army Corps had recommended that at a minimum the district should include the entire Noyo watershed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Kevin?
Question here would be, should the SOI be increased to whatever you suggest? Would you intend to annex
That's
at
what I
that
was
point?
thinking.
Because I don't know if you can't really collect revenue from, your district residents unless you annex them.
Right.
You don't get revenue from a sphere of influence resident.
I am standing for a seat on LAFCO so that the Harbor District can have someone here that can obtain the education that we do not have as to how these things function. This sphere of influence review came up. I had already applied to stand for the position, but our intent is to learn the law.
Okay.
Carrie?
Yes, and you know, what occurs to me as well is state law. And I believe for SOIs in state law, it is indeed legal. I don't know if you say legal and legal, but SOIs, you cannot have an SOI expanded or a current one if it's not where you're going to grow within 20 years. I'm trying to go back and think of the language.
You have to have
But
anticipated
so that's, and I was going to state it later, and I didn't want you to think I was being flippant about SOIs, but that's why I do not think that in 20 years even that you would be expanding your actual district boundaries out to the entire county in the spheres of influence. So I just, wanted to make that comment.
Tony, do you have a question? Comments?
Several comments. First of all, Tony Arthbrook Trails. I'm also a California certified citizen naturalist of the first classes here in Mendocino County and statewide. I'll start with the eelgrass issue and mitigation. One of the issues he brought up is how regulations are inhibiting his ability to do work within the harbor. An SOI that includes all coastal lands as well as the Noyo watershed would allow eventual annexation into a very wealthy area that benefits from the operations of this harbor. Not only that, but mitigation. There's very recent findings down in Monterey County because they've been planting sea otters into an estuary and have found that those sea otters have made the eelgrass come back. The eelgrasses are suffering from algae and a lack of slugs. The slugs are being eaten by the crabs because the otters who used to be present in all these estuaries, and I say estuaries, are no longer there. So an SOI of coastal lands also works for county policies when we have proposals at federal level to develop any offshore resources. Having a harbor district with an SOI including all the coastal lands will elevate the ability of this county to take and make recommendations on those EIRs or NEPA documents that are critical and been illustrated many times here in Mendocino County in the last 20 years. So for him to be able to mitigate eelgrass, he will need access to estuaries along the coast. So for the harbor to take other actions like dredging, he will also need that kind of access. Also now, the tourism industry that is tied to the operations of the harbor district, such as the Noyo, is where we need to go here in this county. We all know this, especially along the coastal region. So anything we do to allow the harbor district to expand into the coastal areas will benefit on multiple levels, both government-to-government relationships as well as economic vitality. I doubt we're going to get any sea otters to be relocated here unless we have such an SOI eventual annexation and working with multiple agencies on these issues. But we are finding that there are ways to improve the ecology here along the coast, and one of those real lacks right now is the lack of sea otters. I'm not recommending that they go up the harbor because that would present issues, but we have plenty of estuaries that would benefit tremendously from their presence.
Keep it
20
short.
years.
Keep it short.
20 years. Well, 20 years seems like a long time, but I know in the last 30 years, I helped do a countywide initiative, which was a coalition of fishermen, forestry workers, and government, and that was about forestry practices that impacted
And the
harbors
relevance
and
to this
estuaries.
point, yeah, what is the relevance?
Well, that is for getting the SOI to the full watershed that flows into the Noyo Harbor. I think that is very appropriate at a minimum. But I'd also believe that looking at the coastal zone and the coastal areas, because that would indeed allow, whatever the size of future annexations, there is an economy of scale that would help this harbor develop and benefit all those properties. So those are my comments.
Okay, I want to bring it back to the commission. Carol, you have a
Just a
question?
question. I mean, we have another harbor in Point Arena. What is the relationship to the two? I mean, if you gave one countywide, how would that affect the other? Or is there no effect? So that's why I'm thinking about the total coastline. And I don't necessarily.
Well, I don't think, well, I think we've heard that some of us are not in favor of a countywide SOI.
Yeah, I know we're not in favor of that.
But specifically, the Point Arena Harbor is operated by the city of Point Arena, I believe, and of course it serves a much larger geographical area, but it's funded through the city, is my belief.
It's funded through the city, but if you, so that too is part of the city SOI, but in terms of some of this kind of environmental stuff, how would that be affected? I mean,
I don't know what impact to it.
yeah, I mean, it seemed to me that there are two harbors
Kevin?
rather than one.
I think what would be important for you to consider is when the next review of your municipal service review occurs, to have some of these facts ready to be part of that. Because I don't believe we can really be using the information you're giving us today to adjust the sphere of influence without having a MSR that actually supports it. So that would be the suggestion that I would make. And it makes it difficult for us under LAFCO rules to just expand an SOI based upon data that's really not in the municipal service review.
During the last review, I was interviewed by the
Mr.
grand
Bracco.
jury.
Oh, the grand jury.
And I presented all of this information to the grand jury at that time, and they chose not to share it with you.
Well, we had Mr. Baracco contact you to your MSR.
2014.
In 2014. In fact, you were here during MSR process.
Yes.
And none of this came up.
Could we bring this back to the commission?
Carrie, you had a question or comment?
Not of the gentleman, but I do have some questions of the document and the map.
Okay, we'll bring this back to the commission. Go ahead. Ask your
Okay.
comment.
I'm a bit confused about looking at the map and then the description that's found on page 6 of the draft, but back at page 84. And it's the top paragraph, current agency operations. And when I look at the map, I can't see where the statement says, is bordered by, it says more than this, but I'm using the last part, is bordered by Little Valley Road on the north and Jug Handle Creek on the south. And I don't see either of those noted on the actual map. So.
You see that, George?
Well, the statement is inaccurate.
Yeah, north and south.
And what page are?
So.
6, top paragraph. Second sentence.
Okay, we can, let me go back and check that.
I mean, I didn't compare it to an actual map of the Fort Bragg area, but, you know, I'm not quite sure what should be stated there.
Jug Handle Creek does show on the map, and it is outside and south of the district boundary. What was the other, the Little Lake Road? Is
Well,
that
it
what the other
was,
reference
it
was to?
says Jug Handle Creek on the south.
Which,
Okay, says Noyo Harbor District is located on the central coast of Mendocino County. The district encompasses 43 square miles, including the city of Fort Bragg, and is bordered by Little Valley Road on the north and Jug Handle Creek on the south. So I'm just trying, if you're giving a description
Right.
of the area, it should be noted on the map, or otherwise there's going to be a lot of confusion. So either the sentence is incorrect, or the map needs some additions.
well, if you look at the map, there's a little cove that's almost at the bottom of the map, and there's a little squiggly line going into that cove. That's Jug Handle Creek. So clearly, that's creek is not
So I'm
the southern
talking
boundary.
about this.
So yes, you're right that it's wrong. I'm just saying, as a factual matter, I can look at this map and see where Jug Handle Creek is, and you're correct that it is not the southern
So we
boundary.
need to rewrite the paragraph then.
We can do that, yes.
Okay.
You could put a period after, and the city of Fort Bragg,
Well, excuse me, Mr. Chair.
and just delete
Hang on a second.
Okay.
page 6, second, top paragraph, second sentence, including the city of Fort Bragg, period. And that's one way to solve the problem.
Kevin, you got to add to that?
I just was wondering which one's correct. Is the statement incorrect and the map is correct, or vice versa?
We believe that the map is correct.
And that mirrors the map submitted by Mr. Dillon also.
I obtained the map from the county.
Okay, good. All right, that's one
And
change.
just for clarification, the district does include the city limits, although that may not be completely clear from the, I guess it is, because
It
the
is.
solid line goes on the west side of the city.
Yeah. Did you have some more comments, Carrie?
No, that just needed to be made clear.
Doug, do you have some?
Yeah, in the section about relevant planning and service factors, which that title is on page 86, yeah, of the packet 8 of the document, but then it goes on to 9 is where they actually are. And it seems to be that these are the same water and sewer considerations that are in one of the other drafts, and I'm not sure why these planning issues are relevant to the district, and whether, I don't know whether this just got lumped in because it was pulled from another draft, and I think we approved a SOI today that didn't cite any county general plan issues, so maybe it's not really relevant that these are cited.
The travails of cut and paste.
Yes. Well, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, and I'm asking that as a question.
George, you have an answer to that?
Yeah, these are dealing with water and wastewater, so I can go back and check and make sure that they
Can't
really-
hear you. Can't hear you. Just
And then do we know the answer to whether the district was formed under a version of the code that's the same as the code is today and has different sections of the code depending on whether it's a harbor or a port?
Yeah, I don't think, I don't have the answer to that. Those are typically more, that's typically more information that goes in the MSR.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Dillon, do you have the answer to that?
Well, I just have an enlightenment on the water and sewer issues.
Please come up to the
Come on up.
microphone and restate your name for the record.
Dusty Dillon, Noyo Harbor District. Noyo Harbor District was the original water district, and when the city needed to form their water district and sewer district, they made an agreement with the Harbor District that they would secede from providing water to allow for the greater good and have a consolidated water district through the city. And these county lines have come up to the point that we have 8 industrial facilities and properties in the harbor that have no water service.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Any other comments? John?
Page 8, packet page 86, second paragraph, and this is referring to dredge material management. And the way that it's currently worded, I think is not correct, because it seems to say the district is responsible for dredge material management and disposal due to recent changes in the classification of the dredge material. Well, no, I think they were responsible long before that. The changes are what has made it problematical. So without changing a lot of the wording, I think it might be more factually correct to say the district is responsible for dredge material management and disposal, period, due to, and I don't think they were exactly recent, but due to strike recent changes in the classification of the Noyo Harbor dredge material and associated increased costs of disposal, comma, the district does not have the financial resources to dispose of the channel dredging material, period. And then the last sentence the same.
I think that makes a much stronger statement.
Did you have that? Did you get that, Beth?
I believe so.
Okay,
I have the
clarification again?
Dusty Dillon, Noyo Harbor District. The Army Corps of Engineers is currently under a $500,000 grant to establish disposal procedures for the material, and the reclassification of the material as a reuse material. And it took 25 years to get that reclassification. We live on a pristine river. Noyo Canyon is 450 feet deep. There are no farms. They haven't cut a tree in 25 years. We have no factories, and there's never been a ship in Noyo Harbor. So the sand has basically the same chemistry as the drinking water.
So it's good.
Well,
So
let me clarify then. I think you should work with the executive officer to make sure this paragraph is worded correctly, because it sounds like there was a recent change in the classification. That isn't what made the district responsible for disposal.
We were responsible for disposal until Congressman got the Army Corps of Engineers a grant to come in
Right.
and
So
deal with the
again,
disposal.
I suggest have Mr. Dillon work with the executive officer to
George,
get
will
this.
you get in contact with him and work
Yeah.
out that?
We'll revise this.
And any other comments that Mr. Dillon may have on the SOI?
We are an ever-changing world.
Yes.
Small point of information, in the training that we had this month, under harbor districts, it says harbors and navigation code is section 6000, and manage any bay, harbor, inlet, river, channel in which tides are affected by the Pacific Ocean. And it goes on with some information.
Is that one coming up, or one of the
It was
training?
part of the information
Okay.
on laws governing special districts.
Okay, good.
So it would be under section 6000, and so, that might be helpful to Mr. Dillon.
Very good point, thanks. Any other comments? John?
I think we should request, or we should certainly send this, we do all our public notice, but it seems like we should direct letters specifically to the city of Fort Bragg and the Harbor District inviting official comment, if any.
Good point. Also, I like Kevin's recommendation to Mr. Dillon about the MSR in the future. And we really can't do much until those MSRs have been amended. those kinds of things. That doesn't mean we have to wait 5 years again. If you can bring us significant information, we could bring it back and discuss it again, but I think we're pretty limited to what we can do on this SOI. Doug?
Yeah, and it would seem that expanding the SOI would be in conjunction with some sort of firm plan to then do annexation. And I believe that if there were a firm plan to do annexation, the expansion of the SOI might even be included in the same process.
Yeah.
But you know, so not expanding it today doesn't in any way preclude it from coming back to us in the future.
That's right. Don, you want to make a comment?
No, I simply agree with the comments. I think a number of people have said we don't really have the basis now to consider an expanded SOI.
No. So how does CEQA come into this if we're expanding an SOI?
If that could result in,
I hate to bring it up.
well,
We
if
bring it up in our resolutions that there's no effective
Right.
CEQA because we're coterminous.
Yes.
But if we expand an SOI,
that could trigger additional CEQA review, yes.
so that would be through the annexation process possibly as well.
Well, even significant
Well, obviously,
action on.
looking for the countywide
Yeah.
SOI would certainly be an issue.
Sure, yes, it would.
Okay, you got your comments all written down from
Yeah.
us, and please get in touch with Mr. Dillon and work out any other details.
We will.
Beth, you've got the changes for our hopefully public hearing next month.
I do. And so the action is that this will continue to public hearing for May.
May.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon, and thank you for the history lesson.
Yes.
Glad you did it later because it took more than 3 minutes. It was very interesting, very interesting.
It was very interesting.
I like the idea that Mendocino County started from the Noyo Harbor. That probably was very true.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it goes back to the Yuki Indians came ashore by boat.
Well, thank you. It was very
It'll be
interesting.
fun.
Brought
Thank you.
some non-boring stuff to LAFCO.
Yes.
Oh, I'm glad to have contributed.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you again and your patience. All right, number 10, we'll go to Irish Beach Water District, SOI. George?
Yes, Irish Beach. We've been working with the district on this, and at the same time, there were 2 applications that were filed for actions related to this. One was the Moore annexation request, which you recall we brought this to you several months ago. Mr. William Moores appeared before you on that, and it was the direction of the commission at that time. You concurred with staff, and we had we told Mr. Moores that he had to complete his LCP amendment process as commented by the Coastal Commission. We understand from Mr. Moores that he has filed that. It is being processed by the county through the Fort Bragg Coastal Office. Once that LCP amendment to change designations, including the inside designation, have been completed, then Mr. Moores intends to bring his annexation request back to this. But because there is an active effort by the property owner to amend the LCP in anticipation of the annexation of that properties, we feel that it's still appropriate to include those lands in the SOI of the Irish Beach Water District. The other matter is the DeRider detachment, and this applicant has been going back and forth with the water district. There is a figure showing that property. The figure does show that property At this point also, on referral, the Coastal Commission has indicated that they feel a detachment would warrant an LCP amendment, and we have advised the applicant of that at the executive committee. We brought forth a letter to the applicant documenting that. It was concurrence of the executive committee to send that letter, which also includes a request for, I think, about $65 in outstanding payments. So that application would be closed pending Mr. DeRuyter's work with on an LCP amendment. We thought we were at agreement. We had the applicant, I attended, and at a regular Irish Beach Water District meeting there, we thought we had language that was acceptable to all parties for the detachment to be withdrawn. And we all left that Saturday afternoon meeting thinking that that had happened. The applicant's representative then asked for more clarification. That discussion is still kind of going back and forth without resolution. And so what we're asking for today is that you conduct a public workshop, determine that the SOI in its current configuration be approved, and or that you concur or provide direction, and then we would set this matter for public hearing.
Very good, thank you. Anybody from the public would like to make a comment? Okay, any comments from the commission? John?
Well, I think a lot of the inclusion of this district, you know, it's within the district boundaries, but it currently includes a lot of areas that are probably not appropriate for inclusion within the district, given the land use, the zoning, the fact that I think a lot of it, and it's not shown on any map we have here, so I would request that when this come back, it show the zoning, it show lands under either TPZ or Williamson Act, and it also shows areas that are not currently served, that are not capable of being served by the district. And I think that's a majority of the district. And then the question becomes, if we have a lot of territory within the district that, and no realistic plan to provide service, and particularly where the land use and zoning are not compatible with an urbanized district service model, why are we including it within the SOI? And we can, even though it's currently within the district boundaries, LAFCO can signal what is appropriate in terms of efficient provision of service by adopting an SOI that is smaller than the district boundary. And in fact, some of that is proposed for Willow, which is coming up after this.
So is this is their existing SOI, and we haven't discussed this ever before. I mean, this is coterminous of what we've been doing in the past, or we? Well, I'm sure we had an SOI on the book somewhere along the line. And how did it get expanded to this?
No, this is the district boundary, and I assume it.
So you're saying they're not going to be able to service a lot of, so shrink it.
Not only will they not be able to serve it, they can't serve it now. There's no plan to serve it in the future. It's also not appropriate to even consider trying to provide service to large, incompatibly zoned properties. And so those are the policies that ought to be cited that would apply here. Our general plan policies favoring retention of resource lands in resource, rather than including them in a district where there is the risk of breaking them up into smaller parcels. But I guess I'd ask the executive officer, am I saying anything that's not accurate so far? Because I think we have many of these parcels that are currently shown here that are not capable of being served because there isn't the infrastructure to serve them.
Yes, that is the case, and that was considered as part of this SOI update. And the reason that we have kept it the way it is because in consultation with the district, they have made it very clear that they feel that this district boundary is appropriate for watershed management and some of their other practices. There's delivery of service, but then there's also monitoring, protection of the watershed. Some of their facilities, wells, diversions are extended up into these outlying areas. So there were a couple of considerations. One was, will they serve? I think Commissioner McCowan is correct in pointing out that the physical delivery of service in the next 5-10 years may not happen, but the district has been very clear on their active management of this area for groundwater monitoring, for protecting of water sources, and maintaining supply for the customers they do have.
Okay, Carrie, you have a question?
Well, George's explanation, hearing Supervisor McCowan, I was going to bring up state law for SOIs again. But I'm not sure where I'm at when we hear their concerns of protection of watershed. And it may even be that they expand some of their district services there, much like water tank or, capture of winter rains, etc. But hearing George go over the comments, that it seems to make sense to me, even though their infrastructure really isn't there, but it might be needed for some time in the future and oversight as well.
What do you think, John?
I'm unpersuaded. Again, the request is that included in this at a minimum be
Oversight is right.
a figure that would show the zoning and land use characteristics of these district parcels.
That we can do. You have that for the next SOI, and
have it for what is going to get circulated.
Yeah, good. We can add that for this hearing draft as well. Yes.
Doug, you going to try to convince them?
Yeah, so the development of the facts that would resolve this question about whether there are some areas that are currently in their district that we ought to consider constraining would be in an MSR discussion?
More
Is that right?
appropriately, yes.
So maybe given the MSR that we have now, and given staff's comments about why the areas in the district should continue to be included in the SOI, that's the facts before us today.
That naughty little MSR came back. Kevin?
To that point also, are there properties within the district boundary that are not paying into the district, or are all of these properties paying into the district for services?
Yeah, any assessment would extend to all properties within the boundary. Mostly they get just fees for service. But yes, in answer to your question, all properties within the boundary are involved in the assessment.
But they're not all connected to the water system and paying
No.
for water, so they're getting just a property tax assessment of some kind.
That would be the minimum, or any benefit assessment that would be in place. And just on that note, with the DeRuyter detachment, that area south of the creek where Mr. DeRuyter owns his property, and then there's several other properties down there, that would probably be one of the areas that would be most appropriate for for Commissioner McCowan's discussion. In that case, the district was very clear that they opposed the detachment, that they felt that that area was appropriate to retain in their district for management purposes.
There's no water for
Okay, so I know you're not convinced yet, but we'll have something
To be continued.
be continued.
Right, and I'll try to get Mr. Charlie Acker, he's the manager. I'll ask him if he could come and speak to you on this in the May meeting.
Yeah, because this might be an important issue with other SOIs where it may
Sure.
not be serviceable by either water or whatever service they provide, but they want it in their district for whatever other reasons. Kevin?
True.
Well, I think it's important for us as a commission to understand when that's going on.
Mhm.
Because we don't want to have a situation where services aren't being provided, but people are paying for something.
Right,
I think that's our responsibility.
good point. Okay, to be continued.
Very good. Well, wait a minute. I have direction to notice it for public hearing on May 2nd, please?
I believe you have that.
Great, okay.
With the figure 2 to be included.
You will have that as well. Thank you.
Beth, you had a question?
No, that's all I was gonna say.
All right, let's move on to Willow County Water District Sphere of Influence update.
Thank you. This is
It's page 91 in the packet.
91.
your last workshop item of the day. And let me get to that page. Again, this is one that, this is a workshop. This is one where staff has worked quite a bit with Mr. General Manager Kohler, and was kind of hoping he might be here today to speak. Dave Redding, excuse me. I was hoping Dave might be here to speak with you. But Dave has reviewed this. He understands that staff is proposing to scale back the sphere. There's an area at the west of the 253 where the sphere currently encompasses resource lands, and there's scaling back on that. And then also to the south along 101, on the west side of 101, and along the east side, going up along the eastern boundary, there are areas that are not served and are resource lands and are proposed to have the sphere reduction. So properties receiving services within the existing SOI are proposed to remain within the proposed updated sphere. There are residential properties, non-resource land, suburban residential, rural residential, remote residential. Again, those are areas that could be served. They're within the district boundary, and they're considered appropriate to receive municipal services consistent with our policy. Staff is proposing to retain those in the proposed sphere. Those properties which overlap with the city of Ukiah do not receive services from the district. We're recommending exclusion from the sphere. And then there's a couple of specific properties. They're named by parcel numbers in the staff report, and they should also be excluded because they do not receive water. And both the district and the city have agreed that the city serves those areas. And then finally, territories recognized as resource lands are removed from the sphere. So we have worked with General Manager Redding on this. We have concurrence from him on this boundary and the recommended changes. And that's my report.
Okay, any questions?
Well, there is the one area, and we can see it extending into the city limits at the northernmost boundary there.
The 1A? that what you're looking at?
Appendix A, Figure 3.
Yeah.
And there are about 85 connections there in the, Rose Avenue and Yokeo Avenue area that are within the city limits. And so the recommendation is that Willow would continue to serve, but this, it just seems more appropriate that provided the city of Ukiah believes that it's capable of providing service to that area, that we would favor a detachment and, favor redrawing the SOI line as a cleanup, and that would be consistent with LAFCO policies. The reason given, I think, for why that was not detached back when annexation occurred was the district wanted to continue receiving the revenue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's cited anywhere in LAFCO policies as why you would not adopt the most logical service delivery model. Carrie?
Is there an agreement with the city?
For that little spot.
Well,
From historically?
I don't know, but it'd be good to, and I don't know if the city administration or council has reviewed this issue, but it would seem appropriate that they do so. So we've been talking with the district, and there's kind of a risk here, or a recurrent theme, where we're tailoring the SOIs to what the district says they want, and that may not always be the best policy, particularly when there's other jurisdictions involved.
Teresa?
There is something in the policy about financially hurting a district by taking away their customers or realigning things. So you can't cripple a district.
Understood, but there's nothing to show that it would cripple the district
there's
to
nothing to show
realign this boundary.
There's nothing to show it wouldn't.
Well, let's have the discussion and get some facts.
Kevin?
I would just, I looked at this, I was not aware of this before I read the staff report, and it wasn't brought to my attention at the city staff level, so it didn't, I don't know if our staff reviewed it or not, but it seems to me at this point, it doesn't matter what we do, if a detachment should occur, and LAFCO's encouraging a detachment to make a cleaner line between jurisdictions, then someone would have to initiate that request, and I don't know if that comes from the city or the district or LAFCO. So that would be helpful to have some understanding about that. But I think before you adjust the SOI to take that area out, I think a detachment would have to occur, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't think it would. It would signal that a detachment would be appropriate.
So can you make contact with the city and see if there's any,
But
what their opinion is?
Isn't a sphere of influence where a district or a city is providing services? So if a district is providing services, then yes, that could be in their sphere of influence. We don't have the right to initiate a detachment. That has to be done by the district or the city.
That's true, I think.
I think
That is not, that's overstepping our boundaries.
Yeah. John?
I believe there's an example in one of these where LAFCO assigned a zero sphere of influence to an existing district, and the message was the district ought to be disincorporated.
Yes, if they're not providing services.
I'm asking, am I right? Did I read that in this packet?
That is an option of this commission, yes. You could assign a zero sphere.
And I'm not saying we do that,
No.
but I think we need input from the city. Are they capable and willing to serve?
Mm-hmm.
If they are, what are the fiscal impacts to the district? How would that be addressed? And that would inform our discussion.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we will make sure that city review occurs prior to this being brought back to you here for
Good,
hearing.
we'll have that next month.
That is our plan.
Okay, any other comments?
But is it coming back for further workshop discussion, or is it coming back?
I would think it's that important, probably bring it back to a workshop.
I think that'd be appropriate.
Yeah, and not for a public hearing. Carol?
I'm getting a little confused about, when we come to a sphere of influence, if that discussion hasn't happened in the MSR, we can or we cannot change it in this sphere of influence?
I think it was in the MSR.
Okay, that overlaps.
I think it was.
Yeah.
Okay, because I didn't go back and check the MSR. But I think that would be really helpful to know if, when we come to an SOI, if everything has been discussed in the, I mean, I just get, as a newcomer, if you will, I'm sometimes a little confused that we say, no, it wasn't in the MSR. So I think in this, we need to know if it was in the MSR.
Well, it might be helpful one day when we actually review these in 5 years, we have the MSR and SOI at the same time.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would
Because
be
we're
really
doing these
helpful.
MSRs now and then 2 years later, we're doing an SOI. It's very confusing. I could see where we all get confused. But hopefully in the future, we'll be doing them jointly together. Yeah, Doug?
I think Carrie had her hand up
Oh, I'm
first.
sorry.
I'll go after Carrie.
You're up.
I wanted to note on page 7 of the draft, but back at page 98, Homo Lane, the L needs to be capitalized, or maybe it's just Pomo. And actually that confused me, so I went back on a map of Ukiah. So there are 2 Pomo lanes, one north of Ukiah and one south of Ukiah, off Norkirk.
Pomo Lane to the north, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, so is it, says west of Pomo Lane, approximately 28 small parcels. It's number 3 on page 98. So I got confused once again, but I did find Pomo off Norgard, but it might not be called Pomo Lane. It may be just Pomo.
Okay, that's 2 people are confused. Anybody else?
Well, I'm not sure this one is Pomo Lane, I think. But anyway, that needs to be clarified.
It just needs to be clarified.
Yeah.
The small L, I go, okay, maybe that means it's just a lane. But I think it would be better just to call it Pomo. Then you're not confused by Pomo Lane north of Ukiah.
Okay.
Correct.
Doug?
So I was just wondering if we should have the MSR when this comes back for our next workshop as part
Yeah,
of
I
our
think that's a
packet.
good idea. I think that would be very helpful. Also, maybe the MSR on Noyo as well. Can we do that? Even though Noyo will be a public hearing and the other will be a workshop, it'd just be helpful to have both those in front of us. Beth?
They are both on the website, I believe. I know Noyo is for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
If anyone requests a hard copy or an additionally emailed copy, I'm happy to do that. I can
Okay.
take the request right now. Or do you want it included in the agenda packet?
Well, I think in the case of Willow, we probably should have it because there is going to be a lot of discussion with regard to the service area.
Okay. And
The
do
Noyo
you
we can
want
all
it-
look up ourselves.
Do you want it noted on the agenda itself, or are you anticipating any action of change to the MSR? Which
No,
we
I
could-
think it just helps us with our
So
decision.
it'll just be a reference document only.
Okay, any more comments?
I can't find Willow MSR in 2013. Was Willow never done?
Willow
It should be on
is,
there. Hit refresh.
Okay,
Willow is not on our website. I was going to bring that up.
it's not.
It has been done, but it's not on the
It's
website.
not on the website. Okay.
So
Carol?
let's make sure it is on the, before next month, make sure it is on the website.
Well, I was going to bring that up today, and hopefully Beth or Colette will get on that.
Yeah, because especially if it's
Yeah.
a contentious issue.
It's not there, Beth. I looked last night. Okay, let's move on. Do you have the direction there, George, what you want to
Yes.
do?
Right, return this to, check with city staff, advise the city, the district, that this will be a continued workshop item, May 2, and make the MSR accessible to the commission.
And contact City of Ukiah.
Yes.
Beth?
It looks as though it is on the website. It's listed with the Ukiah Valley Regional, and what we've been doing is separating out those regional
So
ones.
it'll be separated
So
out.
it's in 2 places, so we will ensure that it is in
Yeah,
both. It was an
okay, good.
oversight.
John?
Also, I'm not sure all of the numbers match up. For instance, packet page 98, out-of-district service references 106 parcels. The total of the numbers for the ones given don't add up to that, but on number E on page 99, Oak Knoll Road area, it doesn't give the number of parcels in that area. If it totals 37, then we get to 106.
Okay.
By my math. But anyway, so maybe try and determine the number of parcels for item E, and then see if that matches with the total of them all matches the 106.
And if it doesn't, figure out
Yeah, where's
why.
the discrepancy?
Okay.
Likewise, we say approximately 123 parcels that have an overlap. And I think the numbers come close to that. And since it said approximately,
I'm glad it was there.
anyway.
Okay, we'll move on to item 13, MSR completion update.
Yes, this is your packet, page 111, and continuing on 112, a listing of MSR overview as of March 28, 2016.
Chair.
Beth.
There is one correction to this on page 111. At the very bottom, Laytonville County Water District, it says no, that,
It is on the website.
but it actually is, yes. That was the last minute.
And I think Mendocino Coast Recreation and Park District, it says the MSR preparer was unknown. I'm 100% sure that was McMichael.
Which one was that? I'm sorry.
Mendocino Coast Recreation and Park District.
We will take your word on it. The document itself does not say.
Yeah, I looked at it too, but I'm sure, I was there when that one came up before us, and it makes sense that Frank did all those in '08 anyway.
Oh, there it is. We'll change that.
And then on, I didn't see Well Gulch as a separate item. The Well Gulch Volunteer Fire Department.
It's possible because that one sort of just slipped in there at the end.
Okay.
It may not have made our list yet. That one and the other one was Westport, right? Is that one on there?
We are getting to the end on these things. It's nice to see all our MSRs almost done. So we get the fire districts on there. We'll only have cemetery districts. Any update on the cemetery districts?
None.
Have you made contact with Mr. Baracco lately?
The last contact I had with him was included a commitment to have those done by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. We are not sending him any money, right? Till these are all done?
He has not requested any, nor has any claim been processed, no.
All right. John?
Well, in terms of organization, at some point when we get this finally straightened out, I don't think who the MSR preparer is.
Doesn't matter.
No, but what we do want to have, we want to have the agency, we want to have the MSR, we want to have the SOI, and, have the accurate dates for adoption for those. And then for those where it was combined in the same document, maybe in the MSR column, there's an asterisk that says SOI included. And then also, a lot of these were in one document. For instance, Mulberg, the districts that were adopted May 2013, that was actually one document.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think we should have something to indicate that where we have multiple agencies in one document.
It's probably just an asterisk and then have it down at the bottom as part of the Ukiah Valley-wide MSR.
Well, just some way to, the most efficient way to show that can be something we can figure out later, but I think we need to find a way to indicate that, otherwise we're creating a little confusion probably.
Beth?
Perhaps the intention of the document that's presented here needs to be clarified from the commission. I believe it was just an update for the commission at this time.
Right.
If you look at the website, you'll see that the regional ones have been listed, and then those individual MSRs within the regional are also listed under their sections, so like
Okay,
water or whatever.
great. Yeah,
so I
that's
guess
what
if you wanted to indicate what your final inventory was, the website is a good place. It's accessible to the public that way. We have multiple different tracking processes with staff. It really depends on what you're looking for in the future.
I believe the website also gives us the adoption date too, next to it, correct?
And you click the words and then it comes
Yeah,
right
it
up.
does. So, yeah, Doug?
Yeah, just the very last item on this list, the Westport Volunteer Fire Department, I would suggest naming that as the Westport Fire Company. I mean, that's its
That's right.
that's its legal entity status as a fire company,
You're right.
rather than it informally being called the Volunteer Fire Department.
As another suggestion too, George, to have your staff maybe do the same thing with the SOIs, as far as where we are, when they were adopted, and what we have left to adopt, so we have an idea what we're up against for the next 12 months.
Okay, we can do that.
But it is my goal to get, as chair, to get all these MSRs done by the end of my term here. That was one of my things I want to get done.
It's a good goal.
Kevin, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just one of the things that you want to think about when you publish to the website as well is to just have a hyperlink to the MSR. If you're viewing the SOI update, the MSR is listed in the document. That could be a hyperlink to that MSR.
Oh, within the actual document?
So you don't have to go back to the homepage or the table to find those documents. It's very helpful when you're going through
Is that
them.
possible?
Very good suggestion, yes.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for the update, and hopefully we'll see some cemetery districts soon. Move on to correspondence. The SDRMA notice of bylaw revisions. That's available upon request. Did you want to add to anything to that?
Nope.
Okay. Executive officer report.
Just the special district training. I know several of you had the opportunity to attend. I passed along some of the very positive feedback. And today, at your chair, there was the flyer for the last three. There's going to be the governance best practices, Wednesday, April 13th. Willits, public engagement and why do it in Anderson Valley at the Boonville Fire Station, May 11. And finally, financing options, Fort Bragg, June 8th. Carol has generously offered to attend the Willits meeting and help our presenter with setup. I'm asking two things. One is please help us publicize these so that they can be well attended as the first one was. And two, if somebody could help us with they're just 2 hours long, but if somebody could help us with Fort Bragg, just making sure everything gets set up, and then down in Boonville, that would be much appreciated as well.
I have extra copies.
I asked Carol to give us a report on the deal. Before you give it, Carol, Carrie has a question.
Yeah, and the question is, did you email this new round to the commissioners and alternate commissioners? Do we have?
We will.
Okay, because that would be the easiest way for me to get it to districts.
Oh, I'm
I will
just
do
going to
that.
copy it.
I think it was in our packet.
I have paper copies if anyone wants any.
Excuse me,
Yeah, yes,
I'll do the Fort Bragg one.
Oh, thank you.
great. All right, Carol, thank you for putting together a recap. It was very successful.
It would. This is a very brief recap. But according to the attendance sheet, which we requested and received, we had 51 attendees. They had only prepared for 47, but we had, and then I just realized that Teresa mentioned one of the people from the Sand District attended. However, they're not on the list, so the attendance list is slightly off, actually. So, but one of the things we noticed, there were some other people that came through special other organizations that were there. On this particular list,
I think there was 3 or 4 people.
yeah, it was, I counted 8 from other areas, looking at the list. However, people that did attend were really pleased, particularly talked to people from the cemetery districts. And here's something that we don't even have the MSRs on. And they were incredibly grateful that there was something close to home that they could attend, and they felt it was incredibly useful. And I think the fact of doing the trainings, when the gentleman from Noyo Harbor said he doesn't really have information that he needs, and there was some clues in the handouts that were given that would have been helpful to him if he had attended, is perhaps something that we should think about, if not next year, but occasionally having these kinds of trainings again. Yes.
And actually, Commissioner Silver handed him the document that was noted at the last workshop, and I gave him a copy of the upcoming one. And one's in Fort Bragg, so.
Yeah.
So I think, for many of us that, we've had other trainings on the Brown Act, but I think it's never too, the only negative criticism I could possibly make from the materials is many of the speakers really didn't think in terms of small districts. And I think targeting their information better for smaller districts, or at least acknowledging the fact that smaller districts and their resources might be somewhat strained by meeting all the requirements. Just addressing that would be helpful. They mentioned films, and they were going to use some films, and there was a technical fluke in that. But using the films that are funny and really help people get the point. And I think actually prefer having a lunch for the people who were there, so there was better use of time, was a really good thing to do. And I think we need to make sure that if we're doing a meat kind of lunch, it needs to have some extra vegetarian options for people. But I think all in all, I don't know if we've done anything like this before, but generally people also had an opportunity to talk to staff, or members of the commission. And, there were some complaints about not getting information back when they reviewed their MSRs, and that it wasn't included in a report. But it was an opportunity for people to actually talk to members of the commission face to face. And I think that was a really good option, and I'm really glad 3 of us were attending.
Teresa?
So this cost $10,000, right?
12,000.
12,000? Who attended this that was not in a district or city or county that, so there are 8?
These were people who are members of the organization that actually,
California Special District Association.
the people who put on, that they offered attendance to other members.
So, for instance, IWPC, Inland Water and Power Commission. I believe some individuals may have attended that, because IWPC has insurance through Special Districts Association, and they are a member. So I know that was one example.
Well, maybe the Special District Association can pay for those people and not us.
Well, it didn't matter if we had 10 people or 100 people.
Well, it did matter because the capacity was 50, and it was a few days prior, and I was
But
told
it
it was
didn't cost us
full.
any extra money.
I think the capacity was increased, right?
Yeah.
Because we changed location. So everyone who wanted to attend could attend.
Yeah. They moved-
Absolutely.
They
Yeah.
moved rooms.
Yeah. And I'd like to acknowledge Commissioner McCowan, who's the one who made that happen when I
Right, I remember
was
the email.
keeping you informed, and when he learned about the limitation on the other room, he got us in here, and nobody who wanted to come didn't get to come.
Was turned
Gary?
away.
Yeah, and further, Commissioner McNerlin, to explain that, special districts do sit on IWPC. So
Okay, well, it's
there
just-
are
it's-
seats.
I know, but
And-
it's just very pricey, and then
Well,
it
it's-
almost felt like it was our responsibility to get the word out, to get people to attend, and I thought that should have been their responsibility, giving them $12,000. They should be able to email everyone and contact people, and it shouldn't be put back on our staff or on us. So when we're paying $12,000 for something, I want to make sure we get our money's worth. That's all.
So are you against maybe some future roles of LAFCO to educate the districts in the
No,
city?
absolutely not. I think it's terrific, but I don't think we should give someone $12,000 and then have them come back and say, "Hey, LAFCO staff, would you get out all get the information out and get it to the districts?" They have all that information. They're constantly emailing districts. So.
I believe they were promoting
Oh, yeah.
the training also.
Absolutely.
And so I don't think staff views it as a burden particularly. It was simply using our existing lists to get information out, augmented by them sending out information. Is that accurate?
That is true.
I also think that the materials that they gave out, I mean, I felt, able to look in the material and give the gentleman from Noyo Harbor a clue where he could look about the laws that he's concerned about. So, they've given us some really useful handouts that we can use in the future. And I think for the special district people, they felt really recognized and appreciated by this training. There might have been some objections in terms of that's how we used our budget money, but I think it's an extremely good thing that we did, and and I think every few years we should certainly do it again.
And we had the reserves to
do
pay
it.
for it.
Right.
Which, if we left it up to special districts
That's right.
to maybe pay for that, it wouldn't have happened.
Right.
And you want to get the biggest bang for your dollar. So if there were not all special districts, et cetera, that pay into LAFCO and more people attended, those are potential volunteers that go and sit, that need this knowledge, that may go on to a special district board. So for me, I think we're getting really good training for Mendocino County people. And it's actually the ratepayers, it's the constituents that pay into those special districts as well. So I'll get off my high horse.
If anyone would like to see the attendance sheet that we have, I have it here.
So,
And I will be giving this packet of materials to Beth. There will be, she'll have it at the office, or if anybody wants to see the materials, check with her.
Can we put that on our website? Some of it?
They're pretty fat.
Okay.
I mean,
Doug?
there's some information in one which is just a huge list of where you find information. So
Doug,
I
you had a
think it's
comment?
Yeah, these three additional trainings are also part of the 12,000, is
Yes,
that right? Yeah.
yes.
And then are we on to commissioner comments, next item?
Well,
That's fine.
Kevin, you had a comment on this? Okay. I just wanted to say, back to our budget situation, this is something we brought up a couple of years ago, how to spend the money that we did have in excess funds and programs like this. And if we keep some of that excess funds available for this, I'd like to see this more, happening more within the community. I was here for the whole 6 hours or whatever it was, and the comments received, or the questions that were asked by the district people was very informative. There was a lot to do with MSRs and SOIs that a lot of people brought up. They're finally understanding what LAFCO is doing, and I think the more we can put that out in the community, not only that, as Carrie just mentioned, we're going to maybe get more board members for some of these special districts. Kevin?
I would add to that, and I think it's really important that not just the special district reps, but also our ratepayers understand that we have 50-some special districts. It's not just the city that they pay their bill to, it's other districts, and I think ratepayers should be part of the educational process. It should be available to them. It's a community service.
It was money well spent, I think.
Yeah.
Doug, you go ahead.
I think that we could have, they could have brought in a little bit to talk a little bit more about MSRs and SOIs.
Right, they could have.
And I think, for future ones, we need to make sure that that information is included in the agenda.
All right, commissioner reports. Doug?
Yeah, so this goes back to the Round Valley vote, and right after voting no, because I wanted to discuss what date we were going to put on. Then after the vote, the explanation of that it's our practice to just put the one date on, that issue didn't dissuade me from voting yes on the prior ones. I would have voted yes on this one, so it seems a little awkward to have my no vote recorded because of that issue when moments after that issue went away, and I don't know whether there's
We wouldn't hold that
procedurally I can just have my vote recorded as yes.
Probably that one will not draw a complaint to the grand jury that we're somehow violating the Brown Act. So no harm, no foul.
What's the direction?
He voted yes
He voted
on
yes.
Round Valley.
Well, the whole reason is because I want to make sure that we realize how many times these SOIs come up. And that's a real good way to prove that they come up more than 2 times.
It's a real good way to prove that we talk and
Talk and not get a lot done, right. I got it.
Because a lot of the times that it was up, nothing happened.
Oh, not necessarily.
No, we've had
Well, it just-
recurring thing, like the fire district.
I know you like to
MSRs.
talk a lot, but other people like to talk too. And you know something? I don't feel that
So
we,
you can still vote no, then.
yes, I'm going to still stick
And
with
how
my
do we
no.
show that procedurally in the minutes?
It's
Does
still all
anybody
right, it
know?
passed. It's okay, it's okay.
I just changed it to yes, and I don't
No,
have
we
to
have
vote later.
no more commissioner reports.
So
Could we?
can we reopen the vote and have me change my vote or something? I don't know procedurally how you want to handle it, but.
I have no idea. How
Does
to
anyone-
reflect that in the minutes.
Well, I would move that we reopen that vote.
Well,
Allow me to
well,
change my
does-
vote to yes.
Does anyone have a problem
Reconsideration.
if the minutes simply reflect? Doug's
I don't have
vote?
any problem.
I
Okay,
don't
this
care.
never happens.
The chair says it's okay. The only thing I wanted to bring up on the, Carrie, go ahead, on the commission reports.
Yes, it's a question. Where is the paper screening going to take place for the ED on Friday?
That's up to the ad
Oh,
hoc
this
committee.
is for the ad hoc committee.
Yes.
ED.
Conference center? Does that work? I mean,
We-
we can talk about it after and set up a
Conference
specific
center
place.
in your office? Oh,
I just have to be given a place because I don't have a
Let's
place
touch
at
base
this
after and
time.
Make sure, Kevin,
So it's
Can you stay out
Friday,
there for a minute?
10 a.m. Just need to know the
There,
place.
yep,
I haven't shifted
the
gears.
proposals are due today, correct?
They
Or is
are
it
by
tomorrow?
5.
Yeah,
All right.
probably,
All right, any other commission reports? I just want to, there is a item on here for executive committee meeting on the 29th, and we did discuss a little bit earlier. I did talk to our council about the employer issue with our clerk, and he suggested that it's probably not a problem as long as we don't dictate hours and days. But he was going to send me a sample contract, and I have not yet received it. So what I'd like to do is, I could get an opinion for next meeting. I'd like to go forward with a contract that I could bring back to the commission for review?
Well,
You still convinced
Well,
it's
I
not-
think it should be an agenda item for discussion, because I think it's kind of questionable, and so then we're not going to have posted hours to the public?
No, she'll set them. She'll set them.
Potentially, they could be covered between any of the contracted staff, administrative staff.
I would
so-
want an opinion from someone experienced in labor law, and, rather than someone who thinks it's their job to tell us what they think we want to hear. And I think that's the risk we have.
Well, I wasn't asking him what we want to
Well-
hear. I just wanted his opinion based on other LAFCOs. We
Is
have
it-
to come
I
up
don't
with a
know that
decision
it's
here
any-
soon, because we either have to let the EO know, potential EO know, that they're going to take on the clerk position or not.
Well, there are some very clear items that indicate whether someone's an employee or a contractor.
I understand that.
And it's pretty well set in law.
And it works for private sector as well as public sector businesses.
And
Right,
we
I
don't,
deal with
we
it every
don't
day.
want to be on the wrong side of what the facts are on that one. Because we don't want to inadvertently create an employee relationship, I believe.
So you're suggesting then that for every new EO we have in the future, because it could change every 2 years, that they have to take our clerk?
Makes it
That's
very difficult.
kind of an odd situation too, but that was what we came up with to avoid creating an employer-employee
And
relationship.
I'm trying to create a institutional knowledge for one person on our staff to continue with these things,
I understand.
so.
Is
Well,
it
there's
just the
also-
office hours that's the question, or?
I think there's probably 20 different things that determine whether someone's an employee or not.
And I think that very same consideration would come into play with a contract EO. And therefore,
Exactly.
the very same issue comes into play. So I'm not sure how that works, but it's something to consider.
On
Yes.
2 levels.
With the exception, he's a consulting firm. And that's how they do business, and he has an office location. I think it's a little bit different with the clerk. The way I understand labor law, it's not only telling them when they have to work, but it's also usually you contract with people that supply the office space, the equipment, the blah, 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 under labor law. But there might be something, because we're a government agency, that we have to have a certain location for an office and have the equipment in that office for the functioning of the agency, but I'm not sure. That's why I brought it up last time, because it can get very confusing. And historically with LAVCO, it's always been, I said ED earlier, I meant EO, that individual handled any contracts with other people and could do that because that is how they function.
They
And-
can, they can. However, the person they're contracting with has to have their own business and be their own entity.
That's why I brought it up with the clerk.
Right. So as
And
long as
be-
that relationship is clear, then
Yeah,
it's not.
because-
Such as LAFCO Clerk Incorporated.
Possibly.
I mean, I worked for a firm that constantly subcontract with folks.
Yeah.
And the
I
state-
wasn't disputing what you
Right.
said, but, it is, we just need to get it right legally
Right.
from someone that's experienced in labor law, because this will be a change from what LAFCO has historically done.
Right.
So even if we have to go out and get LCW for a reason, I think we could all approve going and talking to those that specialize in labor law to get an actual confirmation back of whether we can do it or not do it.
Right.
And we'll have a bill to pay, we'll have their letter, because it'll be written, but we keep ourselves protected.
Right. Good point.
Well, the legal question is a tax law question, because it's the IRS that that it raises the issue about whether someone's a employee or not. And so I'm not sure labor law attorney has more expertise in it than our counsel does, and I don't know why we should assume that our counsel doesn't have the adequate knowledge to express an opinion. I assume that he would tell us if he didn't feel like he had,
But we
if that was
should-
outside of his expertise, but it is a tax law question.
But we should receive a written letter back from whatever law firm. I think it protects all of us.
Citing the specifics of why whatever we're doing is legally supported.
Absolutely.
Beth?
I would also, excuse me, request a list of these determinations, whether, okay, because it is about me, whether I be an employer, subcontractor, or contractor. I haven't seen that list. I haven't been asked any questions about office space, own equipment, anything like that. So I feel like I'm in a bit of a blind area here.
Okay, well, I will follow up with our council and see if we can get that opinion to protect it. We'll bring it back next month, but we need to really finalize this so we can give any new executive director direction, executive officer direction as to what the clerk's role is going to play in this.
Not to mention your clerk.
Not to mention the clerk.
But we could agendize it, though. It does sound like there is
Yeah.
a commission decision to be made.
Can we do that, George? Put it on the agenda and I'll get an opinion from, and if Scott can't get one, I'll get one from an attorney that can. I've got an employment attorney that I use all the time, and I do use contract labor as well. So it can be done, but again, I want to make sure this commission is comfortable with it. I'll go to jail for you, though. But I won't pay
I
the
won't.
fine.
Of course, you're the chair.
All right, anything else?
I had you had asked if the training materials could be on the website. I just wanted to clarify, we'll need to talk to CSDA and make sure that that's
okay.
Within
Well, we paid
the
for it.
agreement. So, we'll see.
All right, I got you out of here before 1.
Good job.
No legislative report?
No legislative report, George? Okay. And just me has to sign?
Adjourning at 12:47.
And then I'll get some.
What do I need to sign?
That works.